This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Spockie Season 6, Episode 1. It's also the actual 150th episode.
Woo!
My name is Tim Mitchell. I am in Toronto, Ontario. I am joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
We back, kids!
And we also have our illustrious co-founder, Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Wait for it. He's going to say something. Wait for it.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
Don't worry, Jaime. We heard you. I'm just being facetious. Alrighty. We're just talking about the delay between here and Seattle. For those of you transporting at home. No fact check from last time because, I mean, I did listen to the show, but I didn't really find anything wrong with it. So, yeah, we'll just move on to the headlines with Jonathan Kuline up first.
Yeah, so I thought we'd do a little recap of some of the stuff while we were off the last month or so. So we got our Oscar nominations, which is always kind of fun to see how they treat the world that we care so much about. Good news on a couple of fronts. We got Oscar nom for Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I think we can fairly call a sci-fi film. And we got some, other noms in there as well. Best Director, Original Screenplay. We got a nomination for Michelle Yeoh for Best Actress. We got a nomination for Ke Huy Quan for Best Supporting, a nomination for Stephanie Hsu for Best Supporting, and Jamie Lee Curtis for Best Supporting. So lots of love for Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I think we all really enjoyed. On top of that, we got our first sort of milestone for Marvel. We got a Best Actress nomination for, or Best Supporting Actress nomination for Angela Bassett for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. We'd gotten Black Panther had been nominated as Best Picture, although I don't think, there was much hope it was going to win at that point. But getting into the acting categories is kind of a big deal for Marvel. There's been some really cool performances over the years that just, didn't get the love. So it's really great to see that. Beyond that, kind of drops off a little bit. It's not a great year for genre pictures. Everything Everywhere got a lot of love. There was a little bit of love for Black Panther. Batman got a couple of little nods, makeup and sound and stuff like that, but it wasn't great. So I guess we'll see whether or not that actually translates into actual love at the awards show.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait a minute. Top Gun Maverick got Best Adapted Screenplay, Jonathan. Seriously.
It got nominated for Best Picture.
Really? Well, yeah, that's because of the guy in it, but,
It's because it's
I've seen that movie, and I can tell you, it's a great movie to see in the theater, but it is no Academy Award-winning movie.
Yeah, that to me just felt like a total, we'll nominate this movie because you all saw this one, and that way you'll be able to say, hey, I saw that one. Maybe. Or
sell more tickets.
Yeah, well, it sold a heck of a lot of tickets. It was a real smash last year.
And that may, in fact, be one of the criteria for getting in a nomination, right? So, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, since they expanded the Best Picture category from 5 to 10 a number of years back, and they can nominate anywhere between 5 and 10, they really have tried to make an effort to be a little more populist in there. They've certainly added in, stuff that they think the larger public will support. So Avatar got a nomination. Everything Everywhere obviously did. Top Gun Maverick did. But beyond that, it's kind of what you'd expect from award fare. All Quiet on the Western Front, Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, The Fabelmans, Tar, Triangle of Sadness, and Women Talking. All pretty much within the box you'd expect the Oscars to have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And maybe there'll be a miracle and something like Everything Everywhere could actually win Best Picture, but I doesn't seem that way from everything I've been reading. And it seems like people are really focused in on the Fabelmans as the favorite.
Fabelmans, really?
Yeah, that one seems to be the one that people are kind of feeling. So I guess we'll see.
I've heard good things about Triangle of Sadness, but I haven't seen it yet. So it's still in theaters, I think, right?
I have not seen it on a streaming service here, but that's not to say that it isn't somewhere.
Yeah, somebody advised, one of our cinephiles at work said, see it, but don't look into it before you go. Just go in blind. It's really good that way.
Yeah, and I love Sarah Polley. I think she's extremely talented. I really would like to see women talking, and obviously that's a nice. She's obviously a wonderful Canadian performer and writer and director. So definitely rooting for her too.
Yeah, she was interviewed on Q. I'll put a link in the show notes about her acting, her life, about her directing pretty much, and about how she doesn't like to have children on the set because of her horrible experience as a child actor, right?
Yes,
but,
yeah.
I think, and Carol pointed out, it wasn't so much. I was like Anne of Avonlea was like really hard to work in, and she's no, it was the Terry Gilliam, Baron Munchausen experience that really turned her off.
Yeah. She just put out a memoir that actually my wife got for Christmas that looked interesting. So if you're a Sarah Polley fan, that's out there too.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at the best pictures for a sec, I mean, like that's almost like I'm hearing good things about the movie. I haven't seen it. Tar obviously is another one that's got a lot of good things about it. But
people say Cate Blanchett might be the favorite for best actress for that performance in Tar.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, apparently she did a lot of work for it, right?
Yeah.
And Banshees, I didn't. It's funny. Banshees, I kind of got the Irish gist out of it, but I didn't get the idea that it was from the 20s, like 1920s.
Mm-hmm. That's because Ireland still looks like it's from the 1920s. I love you, Ireland, but you do.
It was very rustic and it was very sort of rural in terms of like where in Ireland it takes place, right? Yeah. Which is why it's confusing. But
I don't think they had to do a lot of set direction to make it look like the 20s.
No, it's true. That's what I mean. Like it was hard to tell.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known, right? Otherwise.
Did any of these stand out to you?
I have to admit that I'm not doing so hot, and I'm kind of looking at Best Picture, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I've seen the original All Quiet on the Western Front, not seen the new one. Avatar, I don't think
one's good.
I don't think, I enjoyed Avatar as an experience. I don't think it should be part of Best Picture. I can only assume that Banshees of Inisherin is good. Elvis is one that I have not seen, despite it being on HBO Max, but seems like a nice crossover between generally popular and probably a good take on it. I personally love Everything Everywhere All at Once. The Fabelmans I've heard good things about, but feels kind of more like an Oscar film than a real film for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the people in the Oscars really love movies about movies and movie making, right?
Especially a famous movie making person as well.
Yeah. Top Gun Maverick, I enjoyed. I think it's fine to include it as the sort of so people will watch the TV show premiere of this event. But I don't think it, as much as I enjoyed Top Gun Maverick, I don't think it belongs as a true Best Picture nomination, even though it is darn near perfect as a many, many decades later sequel. And Triangle of Sadness, really, not sort of tickling my memories. And Women Talking is probably one of those films that I should watch but have not watched.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a Miriam Toews' book, right, John?
Yeah, Miriam Toews.
Yeah, she's a pretty popular Canadian author right now, and that's one of her stories, one of her books, right? So it's very. I mean, it's like Banshees of Inisherin and Women Talking and Tar are sort of highbrow movies, in my opinion. Like they're I think that's what I think of when I think of Oscar type material, right? But then things like All Quiet on the Western Front, this adaptation was really good. I don't know if you've seen it, Jonathan, or not.
No.
The Elvis one, meh. I can see why it's nominated, but I don't think it's. I mean, I could be wrong. I could be surprised. I haven't seen Fabelmans yet, so I have no opinion on it. And Top Gun, like I said, Top Gun is a popcorn movie. Like I go see it in IMAX. Otherwise, wait for the VHS release. Because it's. Have you seen Top Gun, John or Jaime?
I have, and they actually really should release it on VHS, so you can put it up on your shelf right next to the original Top Gun. There's Taylor Swift, records, and she was nowhere close to what records existing when she, probably was born, I would guess. So why not? Why not do the retro, neo-constitution kind of thing for this? Go for it.
Oh God, don't. It's too early to get into that yet, Jaime.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, let's jump to the next story. So in our last episode of last season, we were talking about the allegations that had come up against Justin Roiland, who was the co-creator of Rick and Morty, among other things. And, there was obviously he had been charged with a crime, and it was alleged that he is, so he's facing felony domestic violence charges in connection to an incident from 2020. We were sort of obviously hoping at that point that this, was not going to prove true, but in the wake of investigations by Adult Swim, and subsequently Disney Plus, and subsequently the video game company that he co-founded, he has been dropped from all of those things. So this is the voice of Rick and Morty, for those looking for context. So obviously, like
he's also,
so many...
also Space Oddity, or not Space Oddity, the
Solar Opposites.
Solar Opposites,
yeah.
And a few other things too,
and
right?
Koala Man, and
yeah.
So this, the first thing that came out that was just sort of, he's been let go from all these different things, and so that story sort of popped up, and then in the wake of that, there was a very large piece on the Hollywood Reporter, which I don't know if you guys have had a chance to read, but it's a fascinating read, where they basically deep dove into what his work circumstances were prior to his dismissal, where he basically, he was barely connected to the show at all, that there was a big divide between him and Dan Harmon on the Rick and Morty front, that, he really was just kind of voice talent at this point, that he really wasn't so much in the creative side. And it's a really interesting piece. We'll have the link in our show notes if you want to read it. But it really paints a picture of somebody who, was very disconnected, and it also alleges, these are all, of course, allegations in a story, but alleges that he was not necessarily the best coworker, engaging in some rather questionable behavior around the office, sexist behavior, and other allegations in this piece. So, it's obviously, it's disappointing as a fan to hear that someone whose work you've enjoyed is, alleged to be behaving this way. Obviously, he still has to have his day in court, but, obviously there was enough of a negative story there that these organizations felt that they wanted to part ways with him. The show has said it will go on. Rick and Morty and Solars and Koala Man and everything else say they're going to move on. They're going to find somebody else to do the voices, and it's going to be fine. But yeah, it's pretty messed up, and it's a pretty big blow for a pretty popular show.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they would carry on. I guess you could find a voice actor that sounds like him, I guess. Yeah. Because they did that with a few other people. Like, I think there's a Canadian guy who does cartoons now, or animated stuff.
Yeah, he does Bugs Bunny. The Canadian guy does Bugs Bunny now.
Yeah. We should remember his name, too. But yeah, he's an example where I think he's taken over for Mel Blanc's son, right?
Yep. Yeah, there's these things do happen over the years. There certainly have been people who have been replaced on shows. People probably don't remember, but some of the characters in South Park, the female characters have changed voices over the years, because there's different actors have changed in there. And I'm sure that's happened on other animated series before, where, voices change over time, and what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Somebody else is playing Fred Flintstone now. It still sounds like Fred Flintstone, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously it is disappointing. It is, sad that this has happened, but if these allegations are in any way true, then this person doesn't deserve, to be able to, make his livelihood doing these things. These are awful, awful allegations. So, I guess there's probably one in there for, don't behave like he is alleged to have behaved.
Yeah.
Another one from the last couple of weeks that's been kind of a really interesting one to keep an eye on. So we got this announcement from James Gunn, the new head guy, the Kevin Feige, if you will, for DC, of what they intend to do to sort of reboot the DC movie/television universe. And I gotta admit, it sounds pretty cool. He had this little, video announcement a couple weeks back where he sort of said, we're not completely scrapping everything that's coming down the line. We're still going to release, obviously, the second Shazam movie. We've got the new Flash movie coming out. We've got Aquaman. he said he made a point of saying, the Shazam movie is kind of off in its own corner. It's not really strongly tied to the DCU movies, so go and enjoy that for what it is. Made a point of saying that the Flash and the Aquaman movies are going to be sort of the table setting for the changes that are going to come under his, supervision of the DC. I should say it's him and Peter Safran is the other co-heads of DC Studios at Warner Brothers. But so the announcements were that they're going to do a bunch of new properties between the movies, some cartoons, and then also some television programs. And it's pretty neat. So Superman Legacy, which Gunn is going to write himself, not coming till 2025. So it sounds like 2024 is going to be pretty much a year without DC, which is, if they're building this stuff up, maybe that's good. So this is going to be a new take on Superman, sort of a younger Superman. Superman Legacy sounds good. The Authority is something that they're going to deliver. Now, I am a massive Authority fan. It's one of my favorite books from the last 25 years. It is a much more cynical take on superhero-dom. Not as cynical as The Boys, but just more of a whatever it takes to get the job done kind of approach. Don't put the villains in jail, put a hole through their head kind of attitude. Again, really, really interesting comic book series by Warren Ellis back in the day. And really interesting to see what they lift from those series, because they were really, 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 really well-written stories. I'm looking forward to that. We got Brave and the Bold, which is inspired by a Grant Morrison comic. A lot of this work, including the Superman, seems like it might be inspired by Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison is one of the staples of comics the last 30 years. Very, very interesting, very, very metaphysics and, spiritualistic storytelling. Very, 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 very cerebral, very smart, very interesting cat. And, really bringing the genre up a notch. Not quite Alan Moore, but pretty darn close. So that's kind of cool. We've got a Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow series based on the Tom King comic series that was out last year, the year before. Tom King, Stephen King's son, for those who don't know, and a really talented writer in his own right. We've got a Swamp Thing film, which is really interesting considering they had a Swamp Thing TV show that was very short-lived recently, and I wonder if those two things are connected. They canceled it because maybe they wanted to do this as a bigger thing. Batman Part 2, coming in October 2025. And then those are all movies, and then we got a bunch of DC HBO series. So Creature Commandos, that was a strange pull. These are literally like the monsters of the DCU in kind of a Suicide Squad kind of thing. We've got Waller, which is like a follow-up to Peacemaker. Doesn't sound like Peacemaker is continuing as Peacemaker. It seems like it's more focused around the Amanda Waller character. It's a little disappointing because I laughed my butt off at that first season of Peacemaker. I thought it was great, and James Gunn was really involved in that. But since he was really involved in that, I'm hoping it'll be good. Booster Gold is getting a series. Booster Gold, again, a character that's been around for 35 years. He's a guy from the future who basically gets ordinary tech from the future, travels back in time, and because it's so futuristic tech, he basically appears to be a superhero. So he's kind of a flim-flam man, pretending to be a hero. It's a fun character. I'm looking forward to that. Lanterns, which is like a Green Lantern story. They're describing it as Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan as True Detective in space. Like, okay, I'm in. Mm-hmm. Paradise Lost, that's the based in Themyscira, the home of Wonder Woman, and and then there's more to come apparently. So this is a crazy slate of stuff, and I really kind of take my cues. I really like to see, because I'm very connected to the comic community. I really like to see how people are responding who have read some of these stories and who are fans of this work, and there's a real surprising buzz. DC Comics 2 movies have really not gotten a lot of buzz the last few years. Like, first appearances of people who are going to be in movies don't sell. New books with those characters aren't picking up. But in the wake of these announcements, there's been a lot of heat behind some of these things. The Authority first appearances have all gone through the roof as far as cost. Booster Gold has gone up. people are really betting that this is going to be a big win for DC. So that's kind of fun to watch. Are you guys at all excited about any of this, or is this all like, am I speaking an alien language to you?
Foreign tongue? What is this DC that you speak of? I know. Is it kind of like Marvel in a way? But yeah, no, it's interesting to. I mean, again, those are, it's interesting. I always find it weird that Batman is such a good franchise yet it comes from DC, and then Superman has had its hits and misses, but again, like always some pretty entertaining films, and the Aquaman was kind of interesting, and the whole Justice League thing. I always liked the Justice League cartoon. I used to watch it all the time, and I never really looked down my nose at Aquaman like other people do. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to see that all this stuff is coming. But I mean, it's a lot to lay on a person like this, who's not involved in this kind of stuff to really sort of get the gist of all the significance of all of this, right? I guess we'll talk about Flash in a minute, but the new Batman, Pattinson, I guess that's part 2 one you said we were talking about earlier, right? So, and was it Supergirl or Superwoman you mentioned?
Yeah, that's another one. It's a strange pull, but Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which is based on a recent Supergirl series.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I mean, we all know that DC needs, compared to it's still, they're good movies in their own right, but I mean, compared to how Marvel's done with the whole Avengers and X-Men and stuff, it's tough to compete, right? So I always get confused. Like Spider-Man's not a crossover. Which universe is Spider-Man from? DC?
Spider-Man is Marvel, but it's Marvel. just the movie rights that are owned elsewhere.
Oh, okay, right.
Jaime, are any of these jumping out at you? I know you're a little more comic book versed than perhaps Tim is.
Yeah, I liked the Batman, so part 2 is something I'm looking forward to. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, because it's something a little different. Superman Legacy, I think, just seeing something out there that does something, I assume, new, and yet, reference to the character, just given the legacy part of the title. Interesting. That's for the movies. For the TV stuff, Waller, just because Peacemaker was great, so I kind of want to see a different side of that character. Lanterns, because it's been a minute since we've had some good Green Lantern stuff, that more than just like one-off animated movies. And I lost where it was. I saw something else. And then probably the Booster Gold stuff, just because that's a fun character from like Justice League America, I think. I can't remember which group he ended up in. Yeah, I don't think he was in Europe.
Yeah, well, it was sort of that. It was that post Crisis on Infinite Earths, 1986-87. Justice League International, I think, was the sort of long-term title for that book, where they were sort of the UN peacekeeping superheroes that. He got this great sort of run as this sort of goofy character. I hope it brings some fun. Like that feels like one of the things that's really been missing from DC Comics characters is fun. And some of this sounds really fun.
Yeah, it strikes me as like or Booster Gold is a character which they in the Justice League comics often paired up with a different Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
They were a nice pair, and it feels like in this sort of setting he is kind of akin to Ant-Man, where like you're part of the team, but like maybe you shouldn't be. Like you're here with like some like incredibly overpowered characters, and you're like you contribute. It's good contributions, but you always feel a little bit like, I'm a little out of my league here. Like I belong, but like I'm probably not the top tier person. So I think bringing that sort of, like you said, like humor and self-deprecation and just a little bit less seriousness would be kind of fun to see out of the DC side for this character.
Yeah. And you're actually good call, Jaime. I had neglected in the other thing that they talked about was the Blue Beetle movie that's coming this year. And of course, they're focusing on the most recent iteration of Blue Beetle, who is Latinx and is also just a little more contemporary than sort of the older version of the character. But yeah, I think it's high time we could get excited about this world again. And, I think when they hired James Gunn, we were all kind of hoping that there would be a little more maybe a little more fun. Like that's the one thing he certainly brought to Guardians of the Galaxy is it's not, like it can rip your heart out, but can also make you laugh. And, obviously he's going to have that sort of top-down view on the whole of the DCU. So maybe he can find a little more joy in that world again.
Yeah, it can be a little bit stiff sometimes, right?
Well, and just joyless. Like, I think that's one of the things we talked about before. Like, it's just a little joyless, and it's really nice to see that he seems like he's really revved up to be there. It seems like the projects he's picked are a mix of, really interesting swings, and, I'm sure they're not all going to hit, but it seems like he's just kind of cherry picking really cool stories and basing them off some really interesting work from the last number of years. So hopefully we're in for better days for the DCU.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Speaking of which, we got a couple Super Bowl trailers this week, and that was kind of fun. The biggest one was probably the first look at The Flash, starring Ezra Miller. This trailer dropped on Sunday, and we it had been a very sort of vexing prospect and project for a while. Ezra Miller, obviously, we've talked in this pod before about he's had some legal issues, and obviously hasn't exactly been what you'd want in an ideal leading person. But it's very interesting trailer that sort of, seems to go a lot of different places. We get a glimpse of, what seems to be Barry disrupting the timelines, trying to sort of mix, pulling the old Star Trek and messing with timey-wimey stuff. And, he ends up in other parallel Earths, which seems to be the growing theme in comic-related movies lately. And, we get to see Michael Keaton return as Batman. We get to see the return of Zod. We get to see a super girl, which may or may not be the one that's advertised in this promotion from James Gunn. But, really neat visuals and really looks actually kind of interesting. What did you guys take away from this trailer?
Well, really interesting sort of, like you said, it interesting from the timey-wimey point of view and sort of filling out the Flash storyline. But I mean, like we saw Ben Affleck's Batman, or Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne. We didn't actually see him as Batman. And but wasn't he talking to Michael Keaton in the beginning? Doesn't Michael Keaton play a different character in this universe as well, or in the Barry Flash timeline, or am I getting that crossed with something else? Well,
he was the Vulture in the Spider-Man movies, so we haven't seen.
Vulture. Okay,
yeah, we haven't seen him playing a DC character other than Batman. So
yeah, because I thought I heard his voice, like Ezra was talking to someone in the beginning of the show. But yeah, so this is obviously borrowing from that sort of thing that they did in the last Spider-Man movie, where you had the different Spider-Mans come in, Tobey Maguire and
Andrew Garfield?
Andrew Garfield, the guy from the Netflix movie. But that's how I know him. But sort of boring that sort of idea. Plus the whole sort of like parallel universes and maybe different people become different people, like obviously the Michael Keaton character as Bruce Wayne, kind of thing. That was I'm sure that must have been a Super Bowl like moment when he appears and says, I'm Batman. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which of course he had to do.
Yeah. I mean, he's done that as like I saw him do that once on a TV show. Like he was like just as himself. Just he had this sort of denouement moment where he builds up this whole thing, and at the very end, he goes, "I'm Batman." But yeah, he was an interesting casting choice in the first place, anyway. But it would be interesting to see if the other Batmans, could come back, right? So.
Alas, poor Adam West.
And George Clooney, his nipples, and
Val Kilmer couldn't talk. It'll be a hell of a thing.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it would be good.
Yeah,
the internet definitely had a lot of love for Michael Keaton as Batman. The premise of this movie does feel like Into the Flasherverse, what I'm going to call it.
Yeah, but not in a bad way. It could have been extremely derivative, and in fairness, comics have been telling these sort of crossover between world stories for, damn near 100 years. So it's not like you could accuse one of, taking the other's turf. It's just, obviously, it's recency bias too. People will be like, well, that's just like something we just saw because we did it first. That doesn't necessarily mean, anything. But yeah, I mean, it'll be kind of fun. You know, like one of the things that DC has needed to do for a while is a bit of a tidy. So there's a comic book story from about a decade ago called Flashpoint, and that was the kicking off point for their sort of reboot of the comic book DC universe. They created out of that the New 52 era. This seems like that might be the same kind of thing where at the end of the Flashpoint comic book, you know, first Flash goes back and changes something, it has ripple effect, and then all the heroes in this changed universe, just stop me if this sounds familiar, all the heroes from that changed universe have to go back and figure out how to fix it. And in the end, it gets fixed, but there are changes because things have been, you know, the exact time that things changed are different. And in this case, you know, it gives them an opportunity to maybe do some recasting and maybe change a few backstories and, you know, tweak things a little bit to maybe get to a better place where they want to carry these things forward and not necessarily have the same people come back and play those characters. So,
well, and it's not unusual in comic books to have different people play a hero. Like Robin's been different people, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Over the years, right? Spider.
Yeah.
I mean,
no,
well, I mean, but right. Flash has always been Barry Allen, or
no. As a matter of fact, in 1986 or 85, as part of the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was the first sort of big shakeup of continuity in a long time at DC, Barry sacrifices himself in that story and dies. And his Kid Flash, his sidekick, becomes Wally West, becomes the Flash, and Barry was the Flash from 1986 or 87 until they brought the Flash back in a series called Rebirth. 2000. And
the Flash only started in 86.
No, that's when they rebooted it.
Oh, okay.
The original, so there's been and even before that, there was what we call the Golden Age Flash too. So there was that was the Flash with the silver helmet and the wings on it and stuff like that. So it's Jay Garrick. So there's been a lot of different Flashes over the years. It really is more of a who's the fast running guy of each era, right? But
right.
Now it's back to being a Barry because people there DC seem to really like Barry, but I really liked Wally West, so what do I know?
Mm-hmm. Well, dare to dream. You got a long time to go yet. You know?
Who knows? All right, and the other trailer that we got was the new Guardians of the Galaxy trailer. Again, a nice, we've obviously gotten a couple of tastes of this. We know that it's coming in the not distant future, but this one had a little bit more. Did you guys have any takeaways from the new Guardians of the Galaxy trailer?
Yeah, just I like the what's Star-Lord giving what's Amy Pond's character's name?
Nebula,
giving her the look.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just, I mean, interesting, and sort of, it's, I guess, a different twist on it. We got a little bit more of a reveal in terms of like how Gamora comes back or whatever. Mm-hmm. Not that we know how she comes back, we know that she's back, and I guess in the same sort of Search for Spock 4 or whatever it was called, she's not quite herself sort of thing,
Yeah. Well, I guess it's supposed to be the one that we saw in Endgame, which is that sort of came from the past into this now future, doesn't have all the Guardians of the Galaxy experience that the other version of Gamora had. So it'll be interesting to see if they reconcile those characters, if they sort of start fresh with her.
I thought Gamora was dead because she had to die in order for Thanos to...
She was dead, but then so the Thanos that they fight at the end of Endgame is actually the Thanos from the past, right?
Right.
And with him to the future comes a Gamora who had not met that fate. So she's kind of time looped herself into existing again.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Right.
Yeah. Timey-wimey, kids. We'll get into the timey-wimey of it when we get into Picard season 3, episode 1 in a little bit, because there's lots of timey-wimey in there too.
That too. Yeah, I got some questions there too.
Yeah.
It wasn't new because they've shown this shot before, but the animal cruelty on Rocket Raccoon before he was modified is going to be a something that tugs at the heartstrings in the future. But,
yeah, they James Gunn had sort of said all along the reason he really wanted to do 3 and the reason why he initially, when he got let go by Marvel and then brought back, he he really wanted to tell this Rocket Raccoon story. And so I think Rocket is going to be the sort of emotional fulcrum of this movie. And you're right, like even just seeing the stuff in the trailer, it's like, oof, like it's going to be a hard watch at times, I think. But I'm confident that there's also going to be a lot of laughs and silly along the way, because what else could you expect? And it does sound like, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the cast weighing in, but it sounds like all of them are like, and peace out, Marvel, we're done. It doesn't sound like they have much interest in working on much more Marvel stuff to come, but you never know.
Oh, really?
They back up a Brinks truck, maybe they will, but I don't know.
It's funny, I was just thinking about the name Rocket Raccoon, which obviously comes, I guess, from the Rocky Raccoon of the Beatles. And what's interesting about that is that the Beatles famously, when they wrote lyrics, if they didn't have a finished lyric, they would just throw something in that sounded nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like McCartney wrote scrambled eggs instead of, yesterday instead it was scrambled eggs originally, right?
Yeah.
Because he didn't have the words, right? And I wonder, we'll never know, I guess now, or we can maybe ask McCartney, but if Rocky Raccoon was just a placeholder name that they just kept on the record.
Yeah.
Because they probably were thinking of, we got to come up with some cowboy name that rhymes with this, right?
Yeah.
And that got us a little raccoon with powers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a gun.
Yeah, a big gun. Yeah.
Attitude. Yeah.
And then a couple of sad ones that we should probably touch on. Sort of recapping the last couple of weeks, we lost someone whose work we just really enjoyed recently. So. Annie Wersching, I should say, from, famously from the Borg Queen from our last season of Star Trek Picard, who was also in Runaways and worked on the Last of Us video game. She was in 24, lots of other stuff. Unfortunately, she passed away recently at the age of just 45 after a battle with cancer. So really sad to hear about her passing. It was really nice to see, obviously, the number of people that I follow on social media related to the, sort of nerdiverse. A lot of people just saying she was just a pro and so nice, and lots of really sweet tributes out for her. And, again, she was delightful as the Borg Queen, just, absolutely digging her fangs into the role. So really, really sad to hear about her passing. And, obviously the story that really breaks your heart is that she, she had 3 little boys that she leaves behind. So, very, very sad to hear about her passing, and she will definitely be missed.
Yeah, just yesterday, Raquel Welch passed away. And, it may not be, I don't know how much it means to you guys, but she was the woman when we were kids. Like, when I was like a 6 or 7 year old, she was like, everybody knew who she was in the schoolyard kind of thing. Her fame came probably from 1 million years BC, where she basically is,
fur bikini.
Wearing a fur bikini. And of course, nobody really fact-checked the fact that human beings didn't exist 1 million years before Christ. But small, little
details.
It was still worth looking at. But the important point for me in terms of our milieu is that she played Cora, who was like a doctor, nurse kind of thing in The Fantastic Voyage, which was a telling of an Asimov story about they have to save this guy, and so they've got this shrinking ray, and they shrink down this submarine with the 4 doctors in it, including Cora, and they go into the human body. And so if you watch the little trailer of this movie, it took 2 years. It came out in 1966, so think about this. It was actually being written and filmed in like 1964 to begin with, right? In fact, by the time they realized that Raquel Welch was going to be the sex bomb thing, because Fantastic Voyage came out a few months before 1 million years BC, so it was the first time people sort of really noticed her. Her hair had grown out by the time the thing had the show hit. She was probably wearing a wig in the movie, but the interesting about her though is that she was like, you'd see her a lot, and she was really really she played strong women roles in the early days. She's in one of the remakes of Three Musketeers, and she doesn't suffer fools in that movie. In the character, she actually is. Her father was from La Paz, so she's a part Bolivian. So interesting to see. What you call it? Latinx? I guess is that the word? Anyway, I don't know. But so someone technically of color in that sort of role too. So what's interesting about Fantastic Voyage too is a lot of the effects and way of shooting, stuff like that they did in that movie ended up being what we saw in things like Star Trek and Lost in Space and all that kind of stuff. It kind of, from a special effects point of view, it kind of set the groundwork for a lot of sci-fi that came up until, you could say, Star Wars, right? So, because it was sort of being done around the same time as 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? So a really important movie. If you haven't seen it, it actually holds up pretty well as a movie. It's not super Disney-like, but it is a little bit like that. But it's still, I think it's still a compelling story. It's kind of fun to watch, right? Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot about the human body watching that movie.
One of the things that other people might, or more contemporary for a lot of people, is she's part of an enduring classic. She is the woman on the poster in Andy's cell near the end of Shawshank Redemption, right? So he starts out with a picture of Rita Hayworth, but over time, Red keeps giving him new poster girls, and so he's got her from 1 million BC in her on the wall, and that's when the warden throws the rock and it goes through the poster, and they find out that Andy's escaped through the tunnel. It goes right through her poster.
Really cool.
So,
and just as a more contemporary thing, she, in her 70s, she beat up Kramer and Elaine on the same episode of Seinfeld.
Yes, a classic. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, she was obviously you're a few years older than me. She was still kind of regarded as a sex symbol when I was a kid, but I think she definitely had her real sort of heyday in the late 60s, early 70s.
Oh, yeah, everybody knew who she was in my school.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to jump ahead to the why we all need subtitles?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I thought it was me, right? I've been watching TV and movies and stuff with subtitles on forever, and turns out that this video essay, it's a few minutes long. It's I think maybe 20 minutes long. He goes into what's happening with the reason why people are mumbling in movies these days, and why you really can't hear, and even if you have super hearing, you still can't hear what they're saying. And people like who's the guy who Christopher Nolan is famous for not caring about, like, he wants it to seem authentic. So if somebody's mumbling or speaking through, like somebody's got something, like in the movie, what's the movie about the planes in the war? Dunkirk, yeah. They got the mouthpieces over their mouths, and you can't really hear what they're saying, the sound of the planes and whatever. So he likes the realistic sort of sound, but people complain that they can't hear what the characters are saying in the movies, right? Mm-hmm. And he goes through the whole sort of way that like soundtracks are actually made in films, and he goes through the sort of classic analog days when they used to move the music and the sound effects away from the speaking so you could hear them. And one of the classic scenes in Singing in the Rain is that the story behind Singing in the Rain is the sort of one of the B plot is that the talkies have come out, and so they were all silent film actors in the studio, and they have to start talking, and the one character has this really high, like she makes Howard's wife sound really pleasant compared to or more like I guess Howard's mother's voice, kind of sort of very grating voice, and sort of the whole sort of teaching this character Lena to look into the microphone when she's talking, because she keeps talking and she turns away like this and she comes back to the microphone and like I just did right now, but what they really would do back in most TV shows is that they would have two boom mics for the room, and then each actor would actually have a lapel mic on, right? A Lavinian mic, I forget what they call them, but the so everybody's mic'd, kind of like a drum set, like all the drums are mic'd, and then they mix them together. Except in case of Christopher Nolan, he just doesn't care, like I said before. So. And then, sometimes if they just can't mask the sound effect or whatever, or the cymbal crash or whatever it is that happens while they're making the shot, they sometimes have the actors come back and reread their lines. Oh, yeah. ADR, right? Yeah. And that costs a lot of money, because you're still paying this $20 million actress to come in and do her $20 million voiceover, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a prohibitively expensive thing as well. So, I mean, so he's sort of like, the summary of the video, if you don't want to watch the whole thing, the TLDR is buy better speakers, right? Take a chill pill, or just watch it with subtitles. Yeah. But it's really interesting. If you're interested in how sound goes into movies, definitely check out this particular one, right? And we'll come back to sound in another perspective in my picks later.
Yeah, I have a couple as well that are sort of, in that same sort of, home enjoyment area. So there's a great piece in here that I saw the other day from movieweb.com where they're talking about, the removal of Arrested Development from Netflix, which is happening next month. And this is particularly interesting because Arrested Development aired for 3 seasons on Fox. It was then canceled, even though it was a critical darling. It never really caught on in the mainstream, and it was never a hit. But it had this following, and so it was actually one of the very first original programs that Netflix did was to license the rights to create a 4th season of Arrested Development. And that was a huge deal that they were reviving this show. It was the first of those sort of revival era of shows, and they did a season 4. Which was, it was okay. It wasn't great. It was okay. And then they did a season 5. But if you wanted to watch the complete story from 1 to 5, if you wanted to be a completist, the only place you could do that was on Netflix. The fact that it is coming down is very significant because there is no physical release of part 5, season 5.
Huh.
Season 4 got a physical release. Season 5 has never gotten a physical release. So once this comes down, it will not be available anywhere at all. So this article is about how, in the era before streaming, what we had was this sort of golden era of releasing content that you could own. There was the big boom of TV on DVD, where we would get a season as a box set. You would sit down, and yes, you had to get up from your sofa every, few hours and load in a new disc to watch, but you could actually physically own and watch seasons of shows. Now that we're getting to this unusual era, and I'm going to talk more about Netflix in a minute, but we're into this era now where we're seeing a lot of contraction in the streaming world. We're starting to get to that point of saturation, which I know the three of us have talked about a lot, of there's so many streaming services, there's so much content out there, people are being more choosy with their money. These streaming services can't continue to grow their subscriber bases the way they were in the past, because the thing that drives that is original content. Original content is often expensive, and therefore it creates a loop where basically you can't afford to create more content unless you have more subscribers, and if you don't have more subscribers, you can't create content, and if you don't have the content, you can't get more subscribers, and so you're stuck. So physical media is an interesting sort of thing here, because we're going to see an era coming up soon where we're going to see amalgamations, like we've seen some of those ones in the United States already, where we've seen Showtime has now joined Paramount Plus, I believe. We've seen there's rumors of the HBO Discovery app, whether or not they're going to keep that together. Netflix is in a bit of a bind now because they've spent a ton of money creating original content, and they've kind of plateaued on their subscribers. So it's expensive for them to continue to do these things, and it's expensive for them to continue to pay for the content they've already created, because for something like Arrested Development, there's 15 or 20 key cast members who all need to get paid their royalties out of these, plus the production company, plus. It must cost them a fortune to have on there, so that's why they're pulling it down. And now we're in this place where, you might not be able to see your favorite shows, even if it's created by that. So we've seen Westworld come off HBO Max. We've seen now Arrested Development coming off Netflix. If you don't physically own something, you might not be able to watch it anymore for a very long time. So we could be seeing a trend back towards people actually having to go back out and purchase these things and load the discs if they want to have these things in their collection. It's very, very interesting how this has come full circle.
It kind of lends another question too, like what happens when the Blu-ray players and the DVD players and that all go away too, right?
Well, that's it. A lot of companies have stopped manufacturing a lot of that stuff. Is there going to be a sudden, record players came back? Are we going to start seeing DVD players coming back? It's a very, very interesting discussion. It's also particularly interesting because right now, I frequent a couple of places that are, specialty shops that carry a lot of the used, DVDs and Blu-rays of TV shows and things like that. Is there going to be a sudden surge? Are the prices going to start to go back up? It's funny because for the longest time, I could buy almost anything on vinyl because nobody was buying vinyl except for me. And then all of a sudden, I would start going to those same, like, thrift shops and stuff, and they were pulling out, better stuff and putting it behind a display case. And now, the real record hounds are in there at the crack of dawn, buying up all the good stuff and paying top dollar for it at the thrift stores, which is something I wouldn't have even thought of years ago. Are we going to start seeing a boom on people being like, oh, I got to buy that up because you can't get it anywhere. It's a collector's item now,
Yeah.
And that story ties very well into the next one, which is, so Netflix has started its crackdown. So we had talked about this, I think, in previous episodes. They were going to do this big crackdown. I'll find a better link to it. I had put in a link to an opinion piece from the Globe and Mail here in Canada, which is password protected. They have obviously only subscriber content. In some cases, I have a subscription, so I can read it. But the crux of this piece is that, they've started this crackdown in a few different select markets that is basically saying, only people in your household that share your address can use your login. That is to say, if you have a child who's gone off to school, if you have, a new adult who's gone off to their own place or anything like that, or whatever other arrangements you have, you share with your mom or your dad or your grandpa or whatever, that is now off the table unless you are willing to pay a premium on top of that. For every additional person who uses your account outside of your household, you now have to pay $8 Canadian per month at their top tier plan. So it's not nothing. It's not exorbitant, but it's certainly, it's a dig. And this piece is basically saying, if you look at what Netflix is offering you and the fact they're probably going to have to slow down on the production of original content because it's so expensive and they are so deeply in debt, and their business model of just keep adding subscribers, that'll pay for this stuff is now plateaued, it may not be worth you spending the money on anymore, which in turn is going to basically shoot itself in the foot, and at which point you won't want your subscription and you'll cancel your subscription or subscriptions. And it suddenly becomes a superfluous service. So I'm really interested in knowing from the both of you. I mean, Tim, obviously, this is affecting us here in Canada. Jaime, they're coming for you apparently later this year. They're rolling it out in places like Canada to sort of see, what it does, but then it's coming everywhere else. Does this tip the scales to how much do you really need Netflix? Because we talked about this before. Netflix was kind of teetering for me. There are certainly some shows that I really enjoy. They do produce really good content, but beyond, because of their release model, especially because they do the drop everything at once model, which a lot of other services don't do, I could just get it for 1 month a year and pay for 1 month and watch the things I want and then throw it away. How about you?
Yeah, I'm probably close. Inertia has kept it off, and I don't have anybody else sharing the account stuff. We don't have like a family member elsewhere that's streaming. It's just all here within our literal household, or on occasion if we're on travel, but nothing that would run afoul of even their kind of more restrictive rules. So for us, it isn't a huge impact on the Lopez calculation, as been said on this show. It's more the other stuff around, like, if you don't keep me, month to month with brand new content, then maybe I will unsubscribe and resubscribe when something else comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to be part of the conversation when things like Stranger Things, or they certainly have some tentpoles. I enjoyed their Sandman adaptation last year. They still produce good content. The question is, if they're having an issue with these subscriber numbers, and I got to be honest, I think like the feedback seems to be on social media and on places like Reddit. There's a lot of blowback where people are like, it was only worthwhile because I could share it. It's not worthwhile anymore. I'm done. I'll be really curious to see if this does have any immediate negative impacts for them. But yeah, like, it does seem a little bit, especially when you look at the value that you're getting from something like Disney Plus, which costs significantly less and is still producing good content. Now, it's very important to know that Netflix is not alone in this, right? Like, Netflix is the canary in the coal mine for this problem. Disney's got deep pockets, but they can't keep rolling out the content like they have been. And as a matter of fact, I saw Kevin Feige interviewed this week saying we're probably going to scale down on the number of Marvel shows that we put on Disney Plus, over the next little while, because they kind of went hog wild for a while there during the pandemic. It seems like they needed to scale back. But yeah, across the board, you got to start asking yourself, do you need to have this at all times? Places we joke about Paramount Plus, but if they're going to roll out 5 Star Trek series and stagger them over the course of the year, they probably got the winning strategy right now.
Yeah. I mean, like the thing about it is like, password sharing is something that shouldn't be happening anyway, because, in this era of there are nasty people out there and bad actors out there anyway, nobody should be using any kind of account that doesn't have two-factor authentication. That's the one side of it, from a security side. The second side is it really fair that Netflix is providing this service and it's a subscription service and people are cheating? As a software developer, I say, no, it's not fair. But,
but do you think people use that as part of their calculus, that they're like,
no, but my point where I'm going with this is, I think what the real calculation that Netflix needs to do is, and they probably have done the math on this, and they probably have got they probably, stroke themselves and give themselves enough pats on the back to realize that this is a wise decision, is how much is this password share? We talked about the numbers a few months ago, I can't remember, but how much of their bottom line is being affected by password sharing? Is it like 33%? Is it like 5%? At the risk of everybody using the Lopez calculus from now on, if you ask me today, like, what am I watching on Netflix right now? Nothing. Right? Did I watch Ozark? You damn right I did. I sat down and watched the whole thing, and I binged it in like 2 days. I don't like Netflix's, like you said about Paramount and Disney and Apple TV. They've all got the right idea. Give us an episode at a time. Keep us on the hook, right? Mm-hmm. Netflix puts it all out there. Like, I sat down and watched something the other day. I can't remember what it was, but I spent 2 days just watching this show, which was because everything was available. It wasn't on Netflix. It was another service. But if you put it all out there, there's no reason for people to continue with a subscription. Netflix is lucky because they started from the mail-in, DVD thing. Like, you didn't have to go to the physical Blockbuster thing. You got the disc sent to you. And in fact, didn't one of your stories say something about Blockbuster? Or maybe that was what it was.
That was the headline on the Globe and Mail story, was basically that the crackdown could lead to a Blockbuster kind of failure.
Ironically, we couldn't read the article.
Speaking of bad business models.
Exactly. I get it. Yeah. Okay. Admittedly, if you're borrowing a password and you don't think you're doing something wrong, I'm telling you right now, you are doing something wrong, right? By the same token, though, I kind of wonder. I gotta say, I hate to say this, but when Netflix went down a couple of months ago, I bought Netflix stock, and I'm now making money off of Netflix right now. I'm a shareholder, right?
Oh, so, here comes the truth, Jaime. This is all playing for Big
my
Tim's bank account.
$35 that I've made on Netflix, yeah. But the reality is I don't care what Netflix does as long as the few stock. I think I have 4 shares or something ridiculously small, but as long as that goes up, right, I don't care, right? But I agree with them that people cheating is wrong. People who are cheating know they're doing something wrong. If they don't think they're doing something wrong, like if you're a kid and you say to your dad, here's the password, just log in, and the dad logs into the device and doesn't think he's doing something wrong, that dad needs to question his choices, right? Because you are technically you're actually getting something that you should be paying for, right? At the end of the day, right? So I kind of see Netflix's point, but my point is, as business people, have they really done the math on how many people are going to piss off by this?
I'd be really curious to see what we're looking at it from the prism of our ages too. I really would be curious to know what Gen Z.
We grew up in the the Napster era, right?
Well, that's it. Again, Jaime, you're the youngest of us, so maybe you have the youngest perspective on this. The idea, pirating or using sites that have torrents or whatever else is. Or Napster or whatever else has been part of sort of the existence for a lot of people in the bottom end of Gen X into Gen Y and into Gen Z for sure.
Even like buying bootleg records. Like I remember going downtown and you would see the white covers that had no artwork on them, and it would say Pink Floyd at, the Olympian Stadium in 1977, whatever. Like people would buy that. You'd buy that, and like they weren't as available as they are today, but that was the only way to get these recordings, right? And now they're all over the place. There's all kinds of stuff being surfaced from bootlegs and things, right? But
the smart people are doing their authorized bootlegs, right?
The wise ones, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like Pearl Jam, didn't they release every single show that they did one year on a tour a couple of years ago?
Yeah, they have a whole like catalog of you can watch it. And the Pixies on one of their tours a number of years back, basically you could buy a CD of the show you just saw. You basically just registered and they got a DVD or a CD.
We need to get the youngster position. I kind of cut him off. So
oh yes, please.
I think it's one of those things where when I was younger and had more time, granted the software and availability and other stuff was, not as good back then. So it kind of took more time to find this anime fell off a truck from Japan, right? Kind of thing. And it made more sense. And as, becoming a, old, kind of more older established professional, I'm like, I kind of just want to throw down my, how much is it? $5, $10, $15? But fine. There you go. Give me all the stuff I need. That works so much easier. So the whole idea of making it so challenging of like, you're not on the right tier. Oh, you needed to add this channel. Oh, did you not get the battle pass for? It's like, just take my money. I'm offering it to you. When you try to segment these things or crack down on these things so hard, you are making it seem like, well, maybe it's not that bad of an idea to go pirate this thing, because nowadays that stuff is apparently so much easier. It's a Google search away. You can be on like a Signal or Telegram channel. People will probably just send you a link of like, hey, here's this thing, and just download it off my Dropbox. Like, it's so much easier now to pirate that I don't understand why they would, as content producers, ever take the chance of letting things slip back to that. Right? Like you lucked out that you got into the streaming world. It's basically easy money if you don't mess it up with dumb stuff. Just real basic dumb stuff. Like, yes, there is risk. Content can be problematic, but we've talked about on this show, just to address the Disney thing of like, they kind of went hog wild and with their own words, right? And overdid stuff. Paramount Plus kind of same thing. It's like, guys, if you have multiple shows, never let them overlap. Not the marquee ones, right? You want to let the kids shows overlap. You want to let some of the other ones, sure. But how many times do we say, oh man, we've got the final episode of this thing, which overlaps with the premiere episode of this other thing in the same week. And it adds stress, as an inside baseball thing. It adds stress to this channel, to this podcast. And I'm thinking, well, if you do that with a handful of shows, you have burned a month of free money that you could have had by just merely having them go back to back to back instead of overlapping them. And I'm sure they'll say, well, we had this reason. Well, because Holly is like, yeah, just don't be dumb about it. Look, if you got like 4 shows that overlap, you've lost a month out of the year, right?
Yeah.
1/12 of the year, like people literally don't even have to pay for your stuff. So why do that when, and I'm not saying they should be evil about these things either, right? Like, let's leave a weird 1 week gap where there's nothing just so we can gain a free month out of you. Like, I'm not saying do that, just like do the sensible thing. January to February, it's this show. March to April, it's that show. And then do that. Don't do this, we moved this to Friday and then this one moved to Wednesday, but then this week there's like 3 episodes. Like, just don't do that. That's why people lost track. That's why people, say, hey, I'll just wait and then I'll just binge it all, because you're overcomplicating it. Just do it like you would do for, in many ways, regular broadcast television. Now, I know I say that with a lot of weirdness, because they also do funny things of like mid-season finale and we're stopping this thing for like 3 weeks for no reason and then we'll bring it back. Ignoring that, just the traditional stuff of like, from this date to this date, here's content, and then from that date to this other date, here's content, right? The linear nature of broadcast television sort of forced a little bit more rigor that somehow has been lost and forgotten in the streaming world. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, the other thing, TV is moving to a new night. Like, I watch shows religiously on Sunday night, and one of my shows I've been watching for years now, like 4 or 5 seasons in, moved to Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I PVR it on Tuesday now, but I haven't watched a single episode since they moved to Tuesday, and I've got 6 of them stacked up on my PVR. And remember the other high pressure tactic that Disney used to do. Remember get this before it goes back into the vault and you won't see it again, kind of like that. Is that completely gone now that Disney has a channel? And you can watch any is there stuff still stuck? Is Bambi still in the vault?
I'm surprised they haven't gone to that model where they're like, hey, for January and February only you can watch this stuff. Maybe we'll bring it back in the future, but you don't know. It seems like a smart strategy.
People would cancel their subscription if they did that, I'm sure.
But you can do that on a rotating basis with Disney classic movies or certain shows. It's an opportunity for sure for them to sort of string you out, as Jaime said, to sort of, get the most money out of you. Again, I'm glad they don't. Particularly if I had Disney Plus and I had small children and I was like, let me get this straight. You just took off Cinderella and my daughter loves Cinderella. No, it's unacceptable. If they had pulled Cars off when my son was in his deep into Cars phase, no way. There's just no way. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, these services are going to have to get, and the services and the corporations behind them are going to have to get creative. If there is this deep market saturation, which again, we've been talking about for quite a while, if there are these issues tied to, how you can watch and how much you can watch and what they're pulling down off the services, I think we all had it in our mind. And I heard there's a really great interview. I can't recommend this enough. I'll try and find the link. Casey Bloys, the CEO of HBO, was on the Watch podcast last week. And it was fascinating because his point was, if you thought you were going to get everything that HBO has ever done in one place for one low price for all eternity, don't you think you were a little naive? And I was like, he's not wrong. That does seem wildly unsustainable. But also, maybe we did. I kind of assumed that since they created multiple seasons of Westworld, that I was going to be able to watch Westworld ad infinitum as long as I had the service that created that content. It never occurred to me that they could be yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. You have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it sort of gets interesting when you think about the back catalog stuff of what's the marginal cost of Friends, which I don't even remember where the rights are right now, but let's pretend it eventually will make its way back home to NBC's Peacock, right? Hand-wavy engineering effort and data services costs and stuff, that's all well known. It's all easily bound. There's zero effort being put into Friends today. Yes, they may eventually do another get-together cast sort of thing, but ignoring the special, I'm talking literally the show as it aired. Zero effort put into it today. It is the best sort of thing where there are apparently enough people who just want to watch Friends, either out of nostalgia or if they were too young for the show, they kind of want to see what it was like in the 90s. I feel like it's not unreasonable to expect that sort of thing to stay there or accessible somewhere forever. It's hey, this is not a new thing that people are going to drop down a ton of money for. It costs you basically nothing. Why would you remove it? Why would you put it elsewhere? I think that was the thing.
Honestly, I think more than anything, I think it's the royalty stuff. I think it's the amount, especially for a show like HBO. I'm sure there's a lot of back end money going to those actors and creators and stuff like that. I think that's what's driving a lot of this, is that there's a lot of money that they have to continue to lay out for something that they don't see as bringing enough eyeballs to merit keeping it, right? If you've got, think of the number of A-list actors they had on Westworld. Now, and Friends for that matter, I bet you every one of those members of Friends in their second contract probably had a deal in there that basically said, every time you sell a DVD or, license it to some other country or it appears somewhere, I get another, nickel. Well, you start adding up those nickels per stream and, then they're yeah, we don't want to show this show anymore.
Yeah, the contracts gets real interesting, which I don't know how you make a better consumer-based contract that would kind of make it, minimal to nothing at all for royalties that doesn't end up hurting the actors and the producers,
and the show writers and the creators, and that's the problem. And and that's I fundamentally agree with Tim's point. If you value art, pay for art, right? Television, movies, music, whatever. If you have value in it, and that's why I like going to music concerts, which I do fairly regularly, because I know that more directly that the attending of a concert and the buying of merchandise at a show goes more into the pockets of those artists. So that's my way of supporting their work. But, where are those lines? Like right now, if the contracts are prohibitive and they're ending up, coming back around, it's unsustainable. Like I can't have all the streaming services that I want to have because it's just not feasible, especially with the, the rising inflation and everything else. It just doesn't seem sustainable. And yeah, like it's unquestionable that some of these are going to be merged, and it's unquestionable that some of these are going to fail. And it could be something as big as Netflix, Tim. Maybe we'll get out of that stock.
I'm going to let it ride.
All right. I'm sure we're not done with this topic, but let's be done with it for now.
Yeah, let's move on to the main reason why we're on this show, and that is to talk about something Star Trek related. And this week was the premiere of Season 3, Episode 1, Picard, The Next Generation.
Woo!
Da, da, da. Such an original title.
Sing it with me. Da, 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 da.
Well, they also had the of course they did the gratuitous flyby scene of the new Titan with the music from the Star Trek movie, right? Which I thought was hilarious. The two of them in the shuttle driving or flying around the ship, and yeah, it wasn't quite the 10-minute scene we saw in that movie, but it was the same sort of effect, right?
Yeah. Well, then it's funny because my son and I watched it together, and he joked. He's like, I said, "Oh, it's the new Titan," and then they mentioned it's the new Neo Constitution class, and I started laughing. He said, "Great, now we're gonna get a 10-minute flyby." I was like, "Yeah, that sounds about right."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What I was thinking was, where's Lieutenant Boimler?
Yeah, really.
So, yeah, interesting show. I mean, I didn't do my homework, and I mean, I watched it. I didn't do I enjoyed it, and I didn't do the elevator pitch or the pew pew pew. And well, the pew 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 I think was for me was Beverly Crusher at the beginning. But
okay, that was a genuine pew 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 moment.
Yes, definitely with pew 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 and everything, and the kill shot. That Riker calls out was like badass, right? And it's funny because you're kind of like, well, wait, this is a doctor who's done the Hippocratic Oath and all that kind of stuff, and yet she's willing to defend herself, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it was interesting. It's kind of, I guess my elevator pitch for this show would have been, let's explore every trope of, rebooting a franchise in the shape of them, taking off with a ship.
Yeah, there's definitely some callbacks to be found. I don't know if they qualify as like Easter eggs in some of these. Kind of depends on your opinion. My elevator pitch was pretty similar to what I think many other folks' would be, of like, a mysterious message from Dr. Crusher causes Picard to try getting the crew back together to figure out what's going on in this mystery. Yeah,
and that's very similar to what I had. The a mysterious call from an Enterprise colleague gets Picard and Riker out of mothballs and back into trouble, and that's pretty much the bottom line on this episode, and a good mystery, right?
Isn't that how season 2 started? Like the mysterious message to Picard gets him out of mothballs.
Well, that was 1, right? Because that was the one.
Was it 1?
Yeah, because 2 was the one where the Borg thing, right? Or I guess it was both.
You have to come rescue us, and they get this weird message from the Borg, right, to come to this coordinate. Right?
Yeah.
And I love the fact that these starship captains can look at like 3 numbers and know exactly. I don't know if you've ever looked at longitude and latitude. It's impossible to look at the numbers and say where they are definitively.
These guys know reflexively.
Look at these coordinates and they kind of go, "Oh my God, that's in the Rigel 7 system." I don't know how they do that. Anyway.
Yeah. The pew 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 I had for this one was the destruction scene for
the part where Rick uses his portal to have the thing follow the one and come through the ceiling.
Yeah, that was very, very cool to see. And I mean, obviously it was a digital effect, but we've certainly seen that kind of thing in a cartoon. To see it done in quote unquote real life was pretty horrific. Like as I said to my son as we watched it, I'm like, nobody lived. Like nobody lived. Like there are ways that things are destroyed in these shows where you're like, well, maybe there's some survivors. Yeah, nobody lives. Everybody's dead.
Yeah. Well, we can sort of skip ahead to because the statue in front of this building was
the Easter egg. That was the Easter egg.
So how do we know who that is?
Well, Rachel Garrett. The name rang a bell. I had to go to our usual sources online to find out why it rang a bell. But Rachel Garrett was the captain of the Enterprise C in the classic episode Yesterday's Enterprise, where the Enterprise comes through a portal and into an alternate future where Tasha Yar has not died. And of course, that spins into her being captured in the real universe, because she stays aboard the Enterprise C, and that gets destroyed, but she ends up getting taken prisoner, and that creates the Tasha Yar daughter storyline in the Romulans. But yeah, the fact that, we get the Rachel Garrett mention, and, this sort of terrorist attack, using this device, which Raffi sort of refers to and says that this is a quantum device, right? Mm-hmm. So, timey-wimey. I thought that was particularly telling and interesting, and a bit of a tip to where we're going with all this. But and again, there's lots of foreshadowing. If you're looking around this show, there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of foreshadowing in different spots here. They couldn't have mentioned Frontier Day enough times. The 250th anniversary of the Frontier Day, and what does that mean?
Have you got your chaps ready for that for Frontier Day?
That's right. But yeah, I found the Rachel Garrett stuff really interesting. It got my mind sort of percolating on, okay, well, what does this mean? We know she died. We know she died as part of that mission. It's funny because, when they were doing the scene in Guinan's bar, where, Riker is waiting for Picard at the bar, and they've got all these little models of the Enterprises over the year. And they start talking about, the different Enterprises. And of course, that's a tip back to, well, what about the Enterprise C, which is kind of the forgotten Enterprise. I thought this was really interesting foreshadowing for the possibilities of wrapping in what was maybe one of the very best TNG episodes in Yesterday's Enterprise.
True, yeah, and then the bartender referring to the Enterprise D models as the fat one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I had that as my quote of Riker saying, "Why do you have so many Enterprise Ds?" And she says, "Oh, the fat ones. Nobody wants those."
Yeah. But there's also a couple of other good Easter eggs in there too. So they at one point they're talking about a mission to Rigel 7. Rigel 7, of course, is where the Cage, the original Star Trek pilot, was set. So that was a nice little tip in there. And then that first scene of the show where they're panning past all of Beverly's stuff, right? We hear Picard's log from the very first encounter with the Borg. We hear we see her pearls from the episode where she's where they go back into the gangster and the holodeck thing. I saw a list online. There's a ton of stuff in that first scene alone to sort of sort through. So yeah, lots of good stuff. Picard, of course, is going to have a lot of Easter eggs because it is obviously building on the legacy of not just Star Trek: The Next Generation in this case, but Star Trek lore for the last 50 plus years. So you'd expect a lot of good Easter eggs, and they certainly delivered. Even that scene where they were doing the credits at the end, where they're sort of panning past the control panels, and there's all these different words written on the control panels. I have not done a slow-mo rewatch of that, but my son was sort of saying, well, what did that say? What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean?
At the very end, the end titles, you mean?
Yeah, the end titles were, they're panning past all these control panels.
One of them was the holodeck with all the safety protocols turned off was one of them.
Yeah. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff in there, and Tim, you got a personal Easter egg in that too.
Yeah, so this is my personal Easter egg. Is my friend Rick Sarabia. He's been hinting on Facebook that he's been in a couple of interesting shows coming up, and I thought this was going to be one. He did mention he's got a recurring role in the show coming up, but he hasn't said what it is. Actually, no, it's not this. It's not this one. But he never mentioned a single thing about this appearance. When Raffi's walking through to go meet her Orion drug dealer, she bumps into somebody, and the person she bumps into is my old housemate from university, Rick Sarabia, who I've interviewed him on several shows. But yeah, it's funny when he shows up in a movie, because it's like you see him, and then there's for a second there I see just an actor, and then I realize it's Rick, and then everything falls off from there. First time I ever saw him in a movie is I didn't see him in the movie. He was so good. Like, he's in Short Circuit 2, which was filmed near the Toronto Center. and he's one of the homeless people assembling the robots in the story. And it wasn't until I was watching the end credits that I saw his name, and I just leapt up off the couch and ran to the VCR. It was on VHS back then, and rewound. And my daughter's like, "What is the big deal here?" And I tried to explain to her, but she was too young to understand what I was going on about. It's crazy, man.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so my friend Rick was in this one. I mean, I thought it was cool that he acted in a movie with where he was directed by Clint Eastwood. I thought that was the pinnacle. But I gotta say, being in a Star Trek episode, that definitely takes the cake.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Rick. Not that you'll ever listen to this show.
Yep. I had some big questions, which, obviously the biggest one is, obviously, how does this tie into the Enterprise C?
No, I have a bigger question.
Okay, you go first.
A huge, big question.
Yeah,
okay, wait.
Yeah.
So, in All Good Things,
yeah,
right? Crusher and Picard are divorced, like they were once married. And then this one, he doesn't even sort of acknowledge any kind of prior relationship with her.
Well, he does a little bit with Laris. He sort of says, we kind of started a thing, but it never really went anywhere, right?
She said you tried. Well, I'm sorry, but getting married is a little bit more than just trying to be lovers.
But then we also know that whole storyline got undone by Picard knowing his future thanks to Q, right? So nothing that we saw in that future actually happens anymore, because so much of it has changed by what we've seen in Picard and everything else, right? So, yeah, that in theory, that whole future never happened.
So Michael Keaton's going to show up in a Batman costume, is what you're going to say, right?
Or possibly Andrew Garfield in a Spider-Man costume, yes.
True, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I got 3. At the beginning of the episode, Beverly keeps racking her phaser rifle like a shotgun. What kind of crappy phaser rifle needs to be racked?
It's a water gun, obviously.
What? It's not a super soaker. Like, what's happening? Every time she did it, I was like, wait, they've never had to rack these things before. It made no sense. Like, I mean, it looks badass, and you're like, Beverly Crusher's racking a shotgun and blowing people's brains out, and you're like, but wait, like, are you loading phaser blast into it? I think it makes no sense at all. Anyway, I'm going to struggle with that one for a while.
Maybe they're photon blasts or something.
Yeah, I was not taken aback by it. Maybe because the sequence that I saw, or believed I saw, I felt like I had an explanation for it. Of like, oh, so it's got regular pew-pew-pews, which will, hopefully kill a person, but not necessarily. Because she hits somebody with I think one of the regular pew-pew-pews. And then she does a, pump the shotgun pew-pew-pew, which just obliterates them. And I said, oh, maybe it's like a different...
Like a disruptor.
Yeah, maybe
right?
it's like a different choice. Yeah. It's like there's regular pew-pew-pews, but then when you want to like get rid of the mess, then you could go into like the settings menu and then like Face ID into it, and you're like, oh crap, it didn't catch my face. It's just like, oh, instead of doing with all of that stuff like we've seen them do before, of like having to go tinker with settings to change the power levels, it's like regular pew-pew-pews and hugely destructive pew-pew-pews. Like, that's how I interpreted it, but I don't know, given how quick the sequence is, whether that's actually what's supposed to be happening. Like, I would have to go watch every shot and see what she does. But it's a good question.
There's a Saturday morning cartoon opportunity here where, you've got somebody with a phaser rifle and they're facing off against a huge Nausicaan, and they're saying to the Nausicaan, hang on a second, I have got the desktop the way I want it.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I viewed it as like a user experience quality of life thing, but maybe it's just a weird thing that they filmed. I don't know.
I thought it was definitely strange that she's like racking this thing up. But I did also catch, did you notice, like, that was the most machine gun-esque laser phaser rifle.
Sort of like the Gatling gun.
Yeah, we've never seen that kind of thing before either. I mean, a little bit in Nemesis when they've got those like the Jeep thing where they've got the laser phasers in there. Usually phasers are like one long sort of blade of light, and in this case it was like, firing out like an M80. This thing was nuts.
She got hit in the shoulder and just singed her shoulder, and then like with this other, I thought she went and got a different gun at one point because she was first fighting with them, and then the first one dies, right? Oh, and she picks up this other one, which is obviously like a Klingon disruptor, because that just, like you said, it just turned them into single cells, Yeah. a stain there that Riker was looking at when he said the kill shot was like when she pointed down and.
Yeah, and we still don't know what exactly she was fighting with. They look like 17th century plague masks. The second question, Neo Constitution class, really? Neo Constitution class? Yeah. Retro is in? Like, is that a thing?
I guess.
I have a similar question because I'm slightly confused. I believe we're told that it has the same registration, but it has a -A designation. So you would think, oh, they retired the Titan, and this is now the successor. Just like the Enterprise D is a successor to the Enterprise C, right? But then Captain Shaw makes it sound like he had to get the stank out of the Titan. And I don't know if that was metaphorical or literal. So now I went with, is this this old house style refit where like I don't know if you've seen where
they restored it.
They tear down an entire house and it's basically a brand new build except for like the fireplace that stayed the same. So it's like technically, a renovation and not a new build. But I'm like, dude, it's basically a new house. Like you found a way around the law, I guess, but that's a new house. I don't understand if that's the case here. Is this a totally brand new ship or is it a dramatic? I mean, the original Enterprise to the Enterprise A, to the refit is a pretty dramatic refit, but it's still, things are largely in the same place, right? It's still basically the same shape. This is nothing at all like the same shape of like, what did they keep of the old Titan that's still around? Like that part was a little confusing to me.
So what you're saying is this is the spaceship of Theseus?
Yeah.
This is the they basically rebuilt it piece by piece. Is it really still the Titan?
We've replaced all the self-sealing stem bolts. Then what have you got left, right? Like, I don't,
Yeah. That was, I don't know. I found myself just sort of shaking my head at the idea of like, this seems like something the hipsters would make on a weekend. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to restore this back to its original vintage quality. We're going to put in some of the old red leather. It's going to be great. Like, oh my God. And of course the last one was a real, like, what the was the twist, of course, is the, Crusher's son.
Yeah. He almost went, at the end there.
But,
Leslie.
Okay. So hear me out. So if we tie this into the Yesterday's Enterprise stuff, is there a possibility that there was some timey-wimey stuff in there, the repercussions of the sort of timey-wimey thing where he is, the alternate universe's Crusher's son? Like she had a different son with Jack, a second son with Jack. Because they make a point specifically in the first scene of panning past all of Beverly's stuff, and in Beverly's stuff is some of Jack's stuff.
Right.
And I found that pretty interesting that they would remind us that she was previously married to Jack.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see for next week, right?
Yeah. But I have a good hook of a first episode, like lots of little threads that are like, well, that's interesting. What about that? Well, that's interesting. What about that?
Yeah, I don't know if this is like a clone of Jack. Is it a secret Picard child? Because he hasn't seen Beverly in like 20 years, and given people live to like 150 or above. 60, 80 is the new 40 kind of thing, right? So not unreasonable with their technology. So my possibly premature may have to be retracted big question was, Kirk or Picard, who's the bigger deadbeat dad? It's kind of the similarities here between this and Marcus are pretty interesting to me.
Yeah. And some great quotes. You obviously you mentioned the one already. Human patron, is that how they credit Rick?
Yeah.
I pulled out some of the poignant stuff. So Laris, a point comes in a man's life when he looks to the past to define himself, not just his future. And the response from Picard is, "I'm not a man who needs a legacy. I need a new adventure." That obviously is a nice setup for a final Picard season series. No Starfleet, trust no one. Again, that's it's a little X-Files-y, but it was an interesting line, particularly from Crusher, who we've always known as this very loyal Starfleet officer. And my favorite was just with a big, only Jonathan Frakes can have that sideways smile and say, "Aren't we overdue for a good old-fashioned road trip?" I just thought that was another sort of classic great line from him.
Yeah. And then 7, in a typical 7, sort of like not the 7 from last season, but almost like 7 from the Next Generation. She sort of had that sort of sarcastic way of saying, "Don't get your hopes up," when she's talking about the captain that they haven't met yet, because he's a real jerk.
Oh my god, like that guy was amazing playing a heel. Oh, he was great, man. What a scumbag.
Yeah. And actually, the line he says that's super funny when he's already eating his steak or whatever it is he's eating. When Riker and Picard show up, he goes, "Your reputation's preceded you so far that I figured I better start early."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was just a vicious line.
Yeah, exactly. And then getting rid of all the stanky jazz, right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he could not have been more of a tool.
Yeah, true. Because who's the guy that was in the actor that was in one of the Star Treks? Not the fourth one where Kirk and crew.
Oh yeah. The guy from Beverly Hills 90210, right?
Yeah, he was a dweeb captain, right?
Yeah,
he's like a Boimler captain.
Oh no, that's part 6. I'm thinking about the guy. You know, when it's the part where they steal the Enterprise in part 3 in Star Trek 3 when they steal the Enterprise and they've sabotaged the Excelsior, but the smug captain doesn't know yet. That part is hilarious. Where he's like, they think they're gonna outrun us.
yeah, he's a pretty big tool. He was a cop or something like that in a cop show, wasn't he?
I know he was. I think
he was in Hill Street Blues.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, right? He's been in like a ton of stuff over the years.
Yeah, I think he was sort of the by the book cop from Hill Street Blues, which was unusual because there wasn't a single person in that show that was. By the way, my the lawyer from that show is a sister of a friend of mine. But anyway, Mimi Kuzak. But yeah, watch it, freak. I'm not your dealer was the line by Human Patron, played by Rick Sarabia.
Wait, good on you, Rick. Way to represent Canada in there.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Somebody was talking the other day about how you have to do in Canada to become an actor, to be taken seriously. You have to do Shakespeare, and he actually was at the Shaw Festival and all that stuff for a while.
Cool.
So, yeah, interesting. I mean, good show. I mean, some of the Picards in the past have been okay, but this was compelling enough that I think it's a good send off for a new season. Unfortunately, I mean, like I did mention at the top that there were a few Star Trek tropes that were a little on the nose, but But I think the 10-minute flyby with the music from the first movie was hilarious, right?
Yeah. I will say it was a good start. I found it. Did you guys find it ended kind of a little abruptly? I don't know. It was just like, and there's this giant ship out there, and it was just like, oh, and that's the end of the episode. I don't know. Maybe it just maybe I'm getting spoiled by some of these like 2-part intros and stuff.
The shape of it too. It was almost like the one that came after Spock in one of the J.J. Abrams ones, like that that mining ship.
Yeah. That big thing with the prongs, right?
Yeah, it kind of.
My son said it looked like a batleth.
Yeah, but sort of
like just sort of dangerous to at all angles.
Yeah, I don't understand the aerodynamic design of that kind of approach to things, right? Because I think some of the Romulan warbirds had that sort of forward-facing kind of menacing look, like the big green ones from the Next Generation, right? Yeah. They would look like they could, swat you.
One last Easter egg hunt, because it feels like it's almost a public service announcement. So Picard 47 Alpha Tango is a 20 years plus reused password that you should not be doing for security reasons. Get a password manager, it's in there for fun.
I was amazed that he remembered
the
the password from that long ago, to be honest with you. Yeah. Unless that was his one password, right? Yeah.
That's funny.
But definitely, that was funny.
Well, and even the other one we didn't mention was the painting, right? The painting over his fireplace is the one from the Ready Room on the Enterprise D.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's that big, huge painting that he wants to give to Geordi.
But coming back to the password, though, Jaime, don't you think they should be using like a YubiKey or two-factor authentication of some type?
I did wonder if Picard was just like totally hosed by the demise of Data, where Data was his 2FA.
That's true.
Commander Data, come here. Yes, sir. Can you put your finger on this? I need to read this document. Okay, cool. Thanks, Captain. Bye.
Can you please put in my 8,000? What was the episode where he has the isolinear chips? Can you please put in your isolinear chip code? Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right.
Again, why would Data have to key in anything?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact that he at the end of First Contact, right? He can undo or do anything he wants, right? Like he's the ultimate supercomputer.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Cool. All right, we'll move on to the Star Wars section of the show, which is we're recapping what happened in Bad Batch while we were on hiatus here, right? Was there anything else that we're? Yeah, pretty much this is the only show that we were watching besides this one.
There is one more show.
Oh, one more show.
As long as we've all been watching it.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yes, the last show.
Yes. But the Bad Batch has had sort of, a lot of what you'd kind of expect from Bad Batch. It's had a few sort of Adventure of the Week stories. We did get a nice one, I think it was 3 weeks ago, where we got to see one of the characters from a classic episode of Clone Wars. We saw as a Jedi youngling getting his Kyber crystal in a classic episode come back. So of course that's coming back as the Wookiee. The Wookiee warrior, which we hadn't seen, the Wookiee Jedi, which we hadn't seen before. So that was kind of fun. But the real thing that was on that we were on our hiatus for was the two-parter that was last week, where we kind of get the origin story that we've never gotten before of how the Empire switches from having a clone army to having a recruited army. And it's funny because the first episode doesn't have the Bad Batch at all. It's really kind of centered around, the Senate and the intrigue there. And then, we do get, Captain Rex. And then, of course, we get the second episode that involves them going on this mission to try and, expose the truth. But it's so funny because, obviously this is, yet another example of the Phantom Menace that is now Emperor Palpatine. And we even got Ian McDiarmid coming back to play the voice of Palpatine, who gives this great speech at the end of the episode, where basically, no matter how they played it, he basically had it all lined up so that he could get what he wanted, which was to basically decommission all the clones and have this recruited army. I'm still not sure I see the value in not having the clones. Like, the clones worked out pretty well for them. They programmed them, they killed all the Jedi. Like, why wouldn't he want more of them?
Well, but by the same token, though, maybe he had to get rid of the clones to hide the evidence of how he had them made to do this, to destroy the Jedi, right? Like data destruction, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like more and more of the clones were sort of waking up, as it were, to the fact that, like, their programming was, good soldiers follow orders is not going to fly for everybody. And we just saw that, obviously, in season, the newest season, episode 2, where we saw Cody, right? Cody defects and leaves because he doesn't agree with what they've done, and he tried personally to try and put a hole through Obi-Wan. So yeah, that was a really important episodes. I think I like Bad Batch and I enjoy all the episodes for what they are, but there's certainly ones that are a lot more meaningful.
We also had the I've forgotten the name of the guy, the insider guy. What's the name of what's Ahsoka's name? Is it Voltron or something like that? It's
Fulcrum.
Fulcrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, he tells them he's Fulcrum, but he's not Fulcrum, right? But he's definitely an insider because he's been in a few episodes where from Clone Wars, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Or Rebels.
Rebels, I think Rebels.
Yeah, where he is like a I don't know what you call these guys. Like he's in the Empire,
yeah.
But he's a double agent kind of thing, yeah. Like, because there's a few. I think what's the name of the young guy in Rebels? Ezra.
Ezra, yeah.
Yeah, there's one an episode where he helps Ezra sabotage something or other and cover his trail, cover his path. So he shows up but he tells the Bad Batch that he's Fulcrum, or he's
on their side, yeah.
I think he probably just uses that as a code word to say or is Fulcrum a movement of people?
I mean, multiple people
like
have used it and then use it in the Rebels context, but yeah. And I guess the other milestone that comes out of this episode is that Echo decides to leave the Bad Batch and go with Rex. So we're not only have we already lost Crosshair, who defected in season 1 very early, but now they're down another member, and that spills into this week's episode, which is really about the Bad Batch kind of coping with the fact that they're one less person, and that, Omega is definitely struggling with, the fallout of what they've just gone through and the change and how it's being done. And of course, Tech is taking a very pragmatic approach because he is a very pragmatic character, and that sort of rubs her the wrong way. So this whole episode this week was kind of about the way that each of them is processing that change in their status quo, and she's struggling and he's not so much, and they sort of come to it. I thought he actually had a really good line. Sometimes I fish through and I don't have a lot of great quotes when doing the pull quotes for this one, but I really liked the line from Tech in this episode where he said, I'm not sure how I should care about change. It's a fundamental part of life. I thought that was actually quite poignant as a line. It's one of those beautiful truisms that pop up in the show every once in a while. The one that I wanted to ask you both, having seen the episodes from yesterday, is so Omega is in there and she's drawing the special ore out that is explosive so that she can help them collect the stuff that they need. And she gets a little overambitious and she falls into this like sort of nothingness. You don't know what's down there. And without hesitation, Tech just jumps down the hole after her. Do you think he knew that there was water under there, or was that just a leap of faith? Because theoretically, she could have just been falling down a 50-foot chasm to a rock basement down below and shattering into a million little piles of goo. Didn't that seem a little strange that his move would be like, I'll just jump in after you?
Well, you don't get the
splat noise?
The Hein, what's the Hein guy? Was
it Reinhardt or whatever?
That you don't get that scream that you get, and there was no her hitting the bottom sound, right? Like I would have thought if she hit something solid, you would hear a clunk or a splat or whatever.
We didn't hear a splash either, so I just thought that was a real leap of faith by our man Tech to just be like, I'm in, and just jump right over. I'm like, you could have just thrown yourself to your death for no reason.
I was going to say, like, why wouldn't he put his goggles down and look down and examine what he could see down there, right?
Yeah, I mean, all he could see from where he was just sort of this fog.
Again, why did they take their helmets off when they crawl through that hole?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, I don't know
if that's supposed to coincide with their family sort of thing. That even Tech, as sort of cold and robotic as he tends to be, even he has that. Because you're right, it seems like an impulsive thing that like Hunter or Wrecker would be doing, because they're a little bit more snap to it and kind of emotional characters than Tech. So
you mean Hunter and Wrecker?
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta love that Kiwi accent. It really is a hell of a thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Omega. Yeah,
I'm trying to remember who Echo is now. Like what's his deal? So I think you were talking about the guy who does the voices for the clones, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? Bradley Baker or something like that?
Bradley D. Baker, I think.
Yeah. I don't know if you told me this or I heard this somewhere else, but when he does the characters, he just switches voices as he's reading the script.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
I know.
D. Bradley Baker. I got it wrong.
Yeah, because what's crazy about because if you listen to like Wrecker or you listen to Tech, their voices are completely different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But apparently he does that in a live read.
Well, it's amazing. I must admit, I've thought of this numerous times while watching this show. I've thought, this is the most genius thing that any casting director's ever done. We'll hire 2 people and we'll have a whole show. It's basically D. Bradley Baker and the woman who does the voice for Omega. And, occasionally, of course, they bring in, Rhea Perlman and other people to be the other roles. But really, it's the 2 of them all the time. And it's just so funny. Like, imagine how much, they must have this guy insured up the wazoo because he's doing all the voices. They're like, let's bring Captain Rex back. He's like, okay, let me wait. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Smart stuff.
But again, how does he keep all those different voices in his head, right?
Yeah, for sure. So overall, what do you guys think of this sort of last stretch? Are you is it meeting your expectations? Do you feel like you're getting into it? Does it seem
how many episodes
meaningful?
Are there in this season?
I feel like it's 14 or something like that. I'll have to look it up. But
yeah, we're just a little bit past the halfway. I mean, like today's story was, other than the fact that they're losing their ship and now they have this conundrum of how they get home. The Senate one was a bit odd, but then when they tied it in with the part 2 sort of piece, that made sense, right? It's interesting. I don't know. It's different than, I mean, they were a bit more out in the the frontier in the first season, right?
16 episodes, just like the first season, wrapping up at the end of March. So it will overlap with Mandalorian for 4 weeks.
Interesting.
I find it interesting as a reasonably family friendly kind of take on things. You do have like episode 4, Faster. My elevator pitch for that was, now this is pod racing, and it's
yeah, I had the exact same thing.
Like it's that one's definitely feels more.
No, that was a weak one.
Yeah, weekday afternoon for the kids, they can watch that. It does seem to establish a villain who may come up in the future.
Yep.
And then the other half of this show, and I think this feels very much like Star Trek Prodigy to me, where the other half of the show is establishing important canon things like, how the heck did we go from clones to Luke saying, "Oh, I'm going to go to the Imperial Academy," and stormtroopers are just regular dudes? It's like, oh, it was actually this whole sequence of important political events that happened where Rampart used the clones to destroy the clones, and did weird political moving the money around kind of stuff. And Palpatine was behind him the entire time saying, this is going to happen no matter what. It goes this way, works out. It goes this other way, I'll just say, oh, it's time for a change because look what happened. And it all just, everything's coming up palpy kind of thing. So
yeah,
it's a funny show that way. And that's where I don't really know where to put it, because it's not like, if folks think it's just for kids, it's really not. And that's not to say that it's like horribly dark or whatever. There are some serious themes, but kind of in the old school Disney way of like, guess what, kids? Bad things happen. Deal with it, and move on with your life, kind of thing.
Was the line from Last of Us? Kids die all the time.
Yes. And this mining expedition episode did actually have what appeared to me to be the Lion King Mufasa killing stampede, like the kill zone ravine that they were in with the antelope kind of thing, the deer kind of thing, kind of coming through. So
yeah,
cool. So the question is, have all of us watched The Last of Us?
Yes. Okay, I would just like to, before we get started on our talk about The Last of Us, I would just like to say for the record, when I asked you guys about this a month ago, you were both like, eh. And then I got a text from Tim like 3 weeks ago going, hey, do you have The Last of Us 2 video game? And I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, because I watched the show and it's awesome and I'm playing all the video games. So I was like, hey, wait a minute.
No, I wanted to. So, I mean, so The Last of Us, obviously, we're talking about this. So the very first episode of The Last of Us. And so my question to you, Jonathan, is have you played the game?
I am currently playing. I have owned it for a long time. I had the free copy of the first one that came with, I think, when I bought a PS4. So I've had that for years and years and years.
So Jaime, have you played the game?
Many moons ago. So the modern era of like reboots, remasters and stuff, I've not that, but
okay, so I went online and I bought a $20, it's called Last of Us Remastered, because it originally came out on PlayStation 3 and 4, and then it was remastered for 4, and then they added another episode, which is sort of fits in the middle of the story, where Ellie's by herself, but and tells her a little bit of her backstory, right? Without doing many spoilers. The reason I asked that is because the question everybody's asking me online and in chats and stuff like that is, should I play the game first or should I watch the show? Mm-hmm. And my answer to them is, I watched the first episode and then I started playing the game, and within like the first hour of playing the game, there's a huge spoiler for episode 2.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then episode 3, I believe, is the one with the guy from Parks and Rec.
Yeah. Yep.
What's his name? You can say his name out loud, so I don't try to remember what it is. But his character is a different thing in the game. And the reason why I started playing the game was watching the first episode, having never seen any of this stuff before. There were scenes in that were so well done, but they were so obviously part of the game, right? Like the driving of the car in the very first beginning, and some of the battles that happens, you could sort of see that coming from a really well crafted game, which is why I got curious about it. I figured, it's on sale for $20. What's the worst that can happen, right? And I kind of got the impression you hadn't opened it or played it or whatever. In fact, so just to fill in the story here, Jaime, the Last of Us 2 showed up in my house and borrowed from Jonathan, still in the shrink wrap.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's untouched by any of our hands here.
Yep. I have not popped it open yet. So
my advice is I don't think you need to play the game to enjoy this show, period. Right. But the scene in the last episode, which we just saw with the sniper rifle, that is lifted right out of the game.
There are entire scenes from all of the episodes that are lifted. 3 is a bit more of a deviation. Episode 3 is a bit more of a deviation, but there are very, 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 very reminiscent scenes. I mean, Neil Druckmann is the director of the show. He's also the director of the game.
Right, yeah.
There is a very straight lift in a lot of cases. And in a lot of cases, he's making decisions that are enhancing the game, that make logical sense.
Yeah, I mean, the show takes the whole story and the whole experience up another notch for sure. And that's what I mean. You're not gonna, if you play the game, you're not gonna spoil the show, is what I found, right? Except for certain points, right? But I mean, you don't need to play the game to enjoy the show, but playing the game or having played the game and watching the show are two mutually exclusive experiences. But it's not like where they take a book and try to make a movie out of it, kind of thing. Where you can't have the same level and depth of detail that you have in a book that you can in a movie. Like we've talked about the Harry Potter first bunch of books, that there's so much out of the books that they've never filmed, right? They can make an entire set of films out of some of the B plots in the Harry Potter books, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so that's my point about this show is that I'm really enjoying it. It's really, I mean, it's well made. I mean, it's timely in terms of how the experience we all went through in the last 3 years. It's also reminiscent of things like other zombie type flick. They're not really zombies. They call them infected, right?
Mm-hmm.
But The Walking Dead, only it's not the Walking Dead, which got really tired after 5 seasons and went for 13. I think it's a totally great consumable show. So yeah, sorry that I was a little we'll see at the beginning, because that's how I felt about it.
Yeah. So we got Tim's buy-in. How did you think, Jaime?
Yeah, I didn't know what to think of it going into it, because I mean, video game adaptations aren't, calling them hit and miss would be a little too generous, right? It makes it sound 50-50. They're not, they wouldn't have a good batting average, is what I would say. So I wasn't sure about that. And I said, well, it's also a very cinematic game. So, will it feel like just watching all the cutscenes back to back to back? And it's not. It is not like watching the cutscenes. So the Nick Offerman episode is
Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett in episode 3.
Yeah, it's a pretty big departure from the game, but it's well done, and it seems like all the departures that they've done so far have been in service of emphasizing the themes. So I'm not imagining this like I stay and watch the after episode stuff where they talk to the producers and stuff, and it's very intentional what they're doing there. So it's really well done from that standpoint. I love the actors that they've gotten there. It's a little different than.
Wait, there's after show stuff on that.
There is.
Show?
They have a little
HBO.
Meet the. Yeah, they do. They put it on YouTube here in Canada. You can watch it the day after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's 10-15 minutes after the show kind of stuff. And I think that one of the things that kind of helps is that there is a clear end goal in sight, which I think something like The Walking Dead didn't necessarily have.
Yeah.
It was just survive another day, whereas this one is get Ellie over to these folks, right? That's the entire goal. And seeing how Joel gets Ellie there is one thing, and the relationships and ever. So for me, I played the game, and I think that even knowing notionally what's coming is not negatively impacting my enjoyment of this. my significant other never played the game, and she weirdly is the kind who loves spoilers, which is challenging for a relationship. So she kept asking me, like, well, what ends up happening at the end? And so I told her the ending, so she knows where it's going, and she's still enjoying the journey to get there.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament, right? Like, it's so well told. The way that it's written, the way that they're building these characters out, that even if you do know the end, you still want to watch it happen.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I wasn't sure what to do. Again, I'm not big on horror, and I'm not big on that sort of traumatic kind of stuff. So I was a little lukewarm. I did check out a few people whose opinion I value online to sort of see what they thought, and they were like, the consensus, because I think for critics they said the first 3 or 4 episodes as sort of a bundle, and sort of said, don't just watch the first one, watch a few and see what you think. And everybody said the same thing. The first 2 episodes are strong. The episode 3 is a killer. And so I sat down once. I didn't watch it the first 2 weeks. I watched the 3 episodes on the night that 3 came out and watched sort of in a row. And that 3rd episode killed me. That was so beautiful. That was some of the best television and performing I have seen in my life. With Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett. Murray Bartlett, people may remember if you watched White Lotus. He was in the first season.
That was kind of almost spoiled it for me.
and he was incredible in that. Very different performance, obviously. You may not even recognize him right off the hop. But God, that was just, I saw, and there was a huge, I don't know if you guys were paying attention at that point, but the backlash was a lot of homophobic posts saying, well, why did we even need this episode? It's a real digression. It wasn't part of the game. We don't need this. It was so beautiful. Like, I'm not ashamed to say I was rolling tears towards the end of that when that episode comes to its culminating point. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And the fact that they were able to introduce these characters to you within the context, it was a long episode. It was like an hour and 10 minutes or something, but introduce you to these characters, build them up, tell you their love story, and then wrap their whole story up in a single episode and still hit me as hard as any death I've seen on any TV program over the last number of years was amazing. And then I thought, okay, well, that's, maybe that's a bit of a one-off. Now we're going to get sort of, Ellie and Joel on their sort of adventures and, stories of the week. And then episode 5 this week killed me the same way. This beautiful backstory they told about these 2 brothers and the decisions that the older brothers made to support his little brother, and the conflict, and then how that story comes to a head again. Just beautiful storytelling and so affecting. Like, it really is top-notch television. I think that was what I sort of mentioned in our last episode of last season was, HBO makes great programs. They just do. They just value. They let these creators cook. They let them kind of have these great wide runways. They don't cap them on the episode length, so they can go a little longer and take you that little bit further. They hire these amazing performers and just let them roll. Like, this is a testament to that kind of business model, like, you let real auteurs and artists tell their stories and you get this kind of result. And, you're right. This had every making, and Jaime, you were absolutely right to be nervous about a video game adaptation because they are terrible. They've turned it into something that is absolutely memorable. It's incredible.
So we're looking forward to the rest of it. How many, is it 10 episodes?
9, strangely. 9 episodes to wrap the whole thing. So, this weekend will be 6. So, it's sort of timing out well. It'll be wrapping up right around the same time Mando starts back up.
It's supposed to end at the end of the game, or
yes?
Do we know?
So apparently what they had initially said was we wanted to do 2 seasons. First season is the first game, second season is the second game, and that is what we intend to have as sort of a this is all we want to say. There has been some discussion, given that it is a smash hit, that they might stretch it out and do a 3rd season so they can, go a little deeper on the second half of the story, but they haven't actually officially announced anything.
Cool. Yeah, so here we are. We've time for the annual Spockie Awards. 2023 edition, I guess, or 2022 edition. I don't know. How do we work that? I don't know how.
I guess it's the 2023 awards for the shows and movies of 2022.
22, yeah, that's it. Okay. So yeah, and so we put out a Google thing, and we had quite a number of responses. I had started recording the results, so we could just rip through them here on the show without having to share my screen. And I posted again this morning that the Spockies were available for people to vote on. I don't know if I might have enticed another person to vote in, because the numbers did change slightly, but still they're still very much what they are. So we can go through them. Well, best movie for us was I think probably all three of us voted for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and 59.3% of the people who voted also agreed with us. It was a far and away the best movie of 2022.
Yep.
For best TV show, Andor topped with 34.5%. And Strange New Worlds and Stranger Things tied for second place. But again, at 34%, it was still a clear winner there.
Did anybody vote for the Orville New Horizons? I'm just curious.
Let me just get that page open.
I did not. I ended up, I think, going largely in line with what people had. Let me take a look. TV show Andor, yeah.
So far I'm 2 for 2. I mean, I do think Everything Everywhere All at Once was the best film I saw last year, and Andor was the best television program I saw last year. So those two, I'm 2 for 2 on those two.
Yeah, I mean, I could, basically it was Moon or the Orville New Horizons actually came in as with 6.9%. So it is actually in fourth place.
Come on, that's got to be a gag vote.
People have no taste, and it even beat Star Trek.
What? Come on.
So here's the order. It was this is the order that we put them in the thing. No, definitely the Orville. Moon Knight got 6.9% as well. So Moon Knight and the Orville tied. You asked.
Oh my God!
House of the Dragon. Oh, sorry, it's a 3-way tie. House of the Dragon, Moon Knight, and the Orville. Dorville, as I like to call it. I didn't even. I think I watched 2 episodes so far.
My brain, my precious brain.
Oh, was it that bad? Okay, I'm glad I didn't watch it.
I also only watched 2. I started watching the third one. I was like, I can't anymore. I give up.
Let me cleanse your palate with the best Star Trek.
Okay.
How about that?
All right, do that.
Strange New Worlds, clear winner at 52%.
Yes, also my pick for that one.
They could separate from Canada with that vote, right?
Well, no, because we want them up here. They're creating jobs up here. Strange New Worlds.
Oh, true. That's true.
Yeah, unlike Quebec, they're creating jobs here.
Picard came in at 22% in second place, and Lower Deck came in at 16%, which I think we're all pretty happy with that result, right?
Yeah, I mean, I probably felt like Lower Deck season was probably stronger than Picard season 2, but I'm not going to quibble.
Yeah, it's an animated thing. People probably don't watch animated things.
Yeah,
right?
and it does kind of take the piss out of Star Trek a little, which some people don't like.
Sorry, I have this little furry animal bothering me right now, so I'm trying to ignore him. Best actor movies.
Yeah.
Ke Kwan. He won at 50%.
Yep.
Which surprises me. I didn't vote for him, but it surprises me.
I did.
Okay. Christian Bale at 25%, and that was for the character he played in
Thor: Love and Thunder.
And Robert Pattinson as the new Batman, 12.5%. So
yeah. What did you? Do you guys remember what you had for your picks there? I can read you the.
I have to go and look at the choices.
Yeah, it's Christian Bale, Tena Huerta for Black Panther, Robert Pattinson, Ke Kwan. There was only four people in there, so this was a resounding loss for Tena Huerta.
I'm not sure. I think I went with Ke Kwan, but I'm not. I might have gone Robert Pattinson. I don't remember who I voted here.
So I voted for best actor?
Best actor movies, yeah.
Oh, I voted for Christian Bale.
Well, there you go.
Who knew? I mean, probably because I like him as an actor, but anyway. And it's probably based on the movies the actors were in the pool.
Right.
Best actress, clear winner for movies. Best actress movies, Angela Bassett at 58.2%. Mm-hmm. Again, she could separate from Canada with that. Best TV actress.
Oh, we skipped over Best Actor TV.
Did we? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Best Actor TV. Oscar Isaac at 24%, Anson Mount at 20%. That's pretty close.
It's a strong
to Paul,
finish.
Yeah.
I don't think I think I voted for Paddy Considine in House of the Dragon. I thought he was my favorite performance last year.
Yeah, he was pretty good. Yeah, and Diego Luna. That was a tough
good category. Yeah.
Diego Luna at 16%. So
yeah.
Oscar Isaac, I guess, because he played two characters, right?
Well, three
so
almost.
Long ago.
Yeah, very
so long. Yeah, three.
Very different kind of role.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's what I voted for. I think I voted for Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, it was a good performance.
Yeah, a bit like Tatiana Maslany and Orphan Black.
Yeah, well, that was a hell of a performance, yeah.
Well, I still think of that as 5 or 6 different actresses. But
yeah.
So, Best Actress, pretty close. Christina Chong, 18.5%. And probably just on that one episode, eh?
I mean, I made sure to include her in this category because I really felt like she was a breakout for me last year. I really enjoyed her performance. I strongly don't think she wouldn't have been in my top 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think I picked Genevieve O'Reilly in Andor because I think her performance as Mon Mothma was transcendent.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, that's probably who
and if I had to work my way down from there, I would say Olivia Cooke and Emma Darcy, both in House of the Dragon, were incredible. Sadie Sink was, again, a really, really strong contender in Stranger Things. But this was the most stacked category across the board. Like, all these performances were amazing.
But looking at the numbers, right? So Christina Chong probably got maybe 2 more votes or 3 more votes than other people.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, she got 5 votes. Sadie Sink and Tatiana Maslany got 4 votes. So that's a horse race, right?
Well, but if you look at that category, it's absolutely stacked. Like,
Jenna Ortega also got 4 votes.
You could vote for anybody there and be right. Like, there was so many strong performances by women in television last year.
My point is a 3-way tie for 3rd place or 2nd place. So, I mean, the 4 actors are like neck and neck, right?
Yeah.
And then Denise Go for Andor. Yeah, she played. You liked Mon Mothma. I liked.
She was great too. Yeah.
What's her role? Deirdre.
Yeah.
I really liked her character.
Yeah. No, she was great too.
Mackenzie Davis got 2 votes. Emma Darcy got 2 votes, and Genevieve O'Reilly got 2 votes. So somebody else agreed with you, John.
There you go. Yeah. Oh.
And the last vote went to Chloe Grace Moretz in Furfur.
Was that you?
No, I voted for. Denise Go.
Okay.
Or Gooch. It could be Gooch because I had a friend who spelled his name that way. And it's Gooch.
She's British, so who knows?
Well, yeah, my friend's last name was spelled that way, and he said Gooch. Most anticipated movie of 2023. We have, I'm going back to the list version, Dune Part 2 at 33%. And then tied for the 2nd place is Spider-Man
Into the Spider-Verse, or
Spider-Verse and Guardians 3.
Across the Spider-Verse. That's the 2nd one. What? I it was a weird one because again, Spider-Man was supposed to come out last year. I voted for it for last year's Spockies. I voted for this year's Spockies again because I still think it's going to be an absolute banger. But do you guys remember what you were most into for this year's most anticipated movie?
Well, so I probably voted for Doctor Who, but so Picard got 5 votes. Again,
No. This is for most anticipated movie, not TV show yet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, TV show.
Movie.
No, yeah. So Dune was way ahead, yeah. And then Spider-Verse was, so Dune 9 votes, Spider-Man 5 votes, and Guardians 3 votes. So, I mean, like, it's clearly Dune, and then Spider-Verse is the next one.
Yeah. Jaime, what were you most looking forward to?
I think it was Into the Spider-Verse, I think was mine.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's good stuff, but,
Google pie charts are weird, but Guardians of the Galaxy and Indiana Jones are tied for 3rd place. Oh, my
God. Really?
Yeah, people love their indie, man.
I love my indie, too. As far as I'm concerned, the last movie came out in 1989, and I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny, I just interviewed a friend of mine on More Than Just Code, and when I asked him about his favorite movie, he said that it was Indiana Jones as a franchise, and he said the odd ones are the better ones.
What?
I know. So that's like...
Has he suffered a blow to the head? Clearly Raiders and Last Crusade are the strongest, followed by Temple of Doom.
Well, that's one.
At which point they end.
3. Okay. So you're saying 5 is not going to...
I mean, who knows? Like, I'm really conflicted about this. I think James Mangold, who's the director of this, who did the Logan movie, is a terrific director. I think there's reasons for optimism. I love Phoebe Waller-Bridge. There's reasons for optimism. I still don't know that I can convince myself to. I don't know. I don't know what would ever get me to go and see this after the travesty was that fourth movie. That was just so terrible.
Okay, well, let's just try and get you on another panel.
Okay, all right.
Plane of thought here. So, most anticipated TV show of 2023.
Yes,
is clearly Picard.
Love it. And then
tied for second place, Loki and The Last of Us.
Nice. I did.
And then a three-way tie.
I did vote for Loki in this case because I could vote for Picard in a different category.
I see. Okay,
Yeah,
and then a three-way tie for Doctor Who season 14. I'm calling it only because it's got David Tennant in it. But Mandalorian and Ahsoka. So Ahsoka, Mandalorian, and Doctor Who in a three-way tie for. Because we have some Brits on the. Besides me, we have some other Brits here as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted, like, Picard was probably the thing I was looking forward to most, but I think that was just because it was coming so soon and we kind of had some teasers and stuff. But when I stepped back from it, I really felt like Loki was such a great first season, and I kind of want to see where they can take that. So that was the one that I kind of honed in on. But it was only because I could cast a ballot in the most anticipated Star Trek series of 2023.
Well, so that mirrors the best TV shows of last year. I think it doesn't.
No,
the most anticipated one is Picard at 54%. Strange New Worlds at 29%, and that's probably because we're going to see more seasons of that, we think.
Yeah.
And then Lower Decks is the third most anticipated, and then only one other vote for Discovery Season 5.
Yeah, not a lot of love for Discovery or for Prodigy through this whole theme. It seems like those are kind of our weak links, which is, I kind of agree. The last couple seasons of Discovery have been sort of hit and miss a little bit, but it's really like it's taken a bit of a pounding out there.
Yeah, and then the last that's the end of our Spockies for actual talented people. Now it's just best streaming services and movies and things. So best streaming service far and away is Disney at 37.9%. In second place is Netflix at 20%, and then Apple TV at 17%.
I think we should reconduct the poll now that we know what Netflix is up to here in Canada.
Yeah, perhaps. Well, but then we've got HBO Crave, and HBO Crave is edging out Prime Video. The question was, have you seen a movie this year? Have you seen one online? 86% of us have seen an online movie. 62% of us, Jaime, 62 have seen it in a theater. No pressure.
He saw a movie. He saw a movie. Come on.
I saw Avatar.
He saw a movie?
Yeah.
Oh.
The question says, have you seen a movie, not a minimum of 3 movies or anything like that?
Which movie did you see? Avatar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks for risking your life for that piece of trash. But
jeez. Wow. Drive-by on Avatar.
On disc, 38%, and borrowed, Jaime, or Jonathan, 38%. And then streaming services, 93% of us have, this is not a contest, this is just who's got whatever. 93% of us have Prime, 89% of us have Netflix, that number might go down in the next week or so. Disney Plus, 82% of us have it, and Apple TV, 79% of us have it. I forget what the other choices were. They were, Cable, Crave, Paramount Plus, Peacock. Some people have Discovery Plus, surprisingly. And ESPN Plus, right?
Yeah, they aren't available here, so. Yeah,
well, I mean, that's why we put Hulu and... So Hulu and Crave are which one? HBO Max and Crave are the same here, right?
Yes, HBO content comes through Crave here in Canada.
So if we added HBO, which is 11 out of 26, that would give us 24 votes. It would tie with Disney Plus.
Yeah.
If we added HBO and Crave together into the thing.
Pretty much checks out, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So that would put it in tied for third place, right? If you put two together. Well, let's move on to our watch list. I'm going to go through these real quick, so I got a bunch of them. So Smart List is a podcast I've talked about before with Jason Bateman. Now, every time I start taking these guys' names, I forget their names.
Will Arnett,
thank you, and the guy from Will and Grace, Jack.
Eric McCormick.
No, the comedian.
Yeah. What's his name? Oh God,
Sean Hayes.
Yes,
Sean Hayes.
I should know that one. I've interviewed him before.
Will Arnett. Have you? Oh,
Yeah.
wow, cool. Anyway, so they have interesting guests on, and the most interesting guests that they have had on, and they were just gushing, was they had Steven Spielberg on talking about his career and about the Fabelmans and all. I mean, they were just like, I think that was a super duper get for those guys, and a really interesting interview. So, and longer than normal, and they didn't interrupt it with 27 commercials, which they tend to do. I mean, I get it. These guys are doing this through the pandemic, and they're used to big salaries, but the commercials are a bit annoying for me, I find. Anywho, so that's the first one. Second one, Design Canada, is a documentary that was done a few years ago. It's really interesting because it's all the design of stuff that, the aesthetic that I grew up with, like the Ontario logo and the, street signs and all that kind of stuff, Expo, Team Canada. They talk about all this stuff, but right in the middle of it, too, they also show the place where Carol and I met, Canadiana Textiles, where we used to print the Canadian flag. Because obviously the design of the Canadian flag is part of Design Canada, right? So it's a account I've been following on Instagram because it's got a very interesting thing. But I didn't know that they actually had a tie-in documentary. And this is like, for me, it was like Instabuy. I watched it on one of the streaming services, but I just have to own this one because it's right up my alley in terms of Canadian art. The Rainbow Connection is a really cool mashup between, it's called The Rainbow Connection, a Benoit Blanc mystery, and it's a mashup between a bunch of Muppet movies and Benoit Blanc, the first two Green Onion movies, or not, Glass Onion and the previous one, Knives Out. And it's a really cool mashup because it's like, what if Benoit Blanc was crossed over with the Muppets in terms of a mystery or whatever. So it's pretty funny the way they've sort of merged the two movies together. That's kind of cool. Real quick one too. As you know, I'm a huge 2001 fan. Somebody's put together a mix of 2001: A Space Odyssey as if it was done in the style of Star Wars, including the crawler at the very beginning and the John Williams soundtrack, and taking the scenes from 2001 and putting it together into a very Star Wars type story. So it's really cool. It's like, I don't think it's it's almost, it's a few minutes long. It's not very super long, but definitely check that one out. It's really, really well done. The latest TV show I've seen recently is called Extraordinary. I don't know what the genesis of this one is. The actress, I've forgotten her name now, and I'll have it in the fact check.
And good luck pronouncing it if you do. I was going to add this to the watch list, and it's all you already had. It's Saoirse.
So. It's the same as Saoirse Ronan. It's Saoirse.
Yes. No, it's not Saoirse.
Saoirse,
yeah. What is it? It's Gaelic. She has a beautiful Gaelic name.
Oh no, yeah, no, you're right. She sounds like Saoirse Ronan. She's got the same sort of pronunciation. Yes, it's Mildred Tyers, I think. How I would. Yeah, you're right. I'm probably completely missing that one up, right?
Yeah,
but she's got
from
the same
Cork.
sort of
yeah,
same accent or similar accent, and she's hilarious. But this is Fleabag meets Supers, because everybody in this world has extraordinary powers. Meets Red Dwarf. Yeah,
I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you get the Red Dwarf reference.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, it's hilarious. It's like right up our alley in terms of superpowers and all that. It's almost like The Boys in terms of like they're all oddball characters. Yeah. People who have powers.
But it's a comedy. It's a straight comedy. Like, I mean, there's some like a little bit of melodrama, but it really is played for comedy. It's so funny. I had sat down to watch that. My wife and I just watched it last week. Watched the whole thing in a few days, and
this is the one I binged in like 2 days. Like, it was just I had to stop and go to sleep. Like, it's so good, and it's short.
Yeah, it's 8 episodes, 25 minutes apiece. You can be through the whole thing in a day if you put your mind to it, or a few days if you want to pace yourself. But they've already for those who care, they've already announced the season 2 is coming. So that's great.
Nice.
But it's gross in the best possible way. Like, some of the abilities that they give the characters, it's this person can fly and this person's super strong, but it's also like one of the lead characters can speak to the dead and can speak to anybody who's dead. And one person can transform back and forth into a cat and gets into weird adventures doing that. But then they get into the really weird stuff too, like the one guy who can give people orgasms, male or female or otherwise, just by touching them, which is, I mean,
Yeah.
it's so funny. It's so funny. Just what they name the cat is hilarious alone.
But isn't there one where isn't there one where they, for fun, they bring back Hitler and then they tease
And they
him?
make fun of him and tell him all the things that are in modern society. Yes.
Yeah.
It's really good. Can't recommend that one enough.
Yeah. So the next one is a deep dive. It's another podcast that I watch called Strong Songs, I think. Should have had that prepared. I don't know how I stumbled across this, but I like Strong Songs. I like it. I like shows about how songs are put together, how music's put together. This one's more about the way songs are structured, right? And what's interesting about it is he's actually on break right now. He's on hiatus, and he came back to do an episode about the music of Andor because he's blown away by the music of Andor. And what's interesting about it is there's a 4-note harmony or 4-chord harmony that runs throughout the theme of Andor's theme. But in every single episode and every single styling of this particular theme song is different based on what's happening in the story. Like sometimes, like when they're on Ferric, there's like, it's like them banging on, pieces of metal and that kind of stuff. And he examines how the music is sort of put together and how it sets the mood for each one of the little, the little 3-story arcs that each episode has. And it's amazing. And even he talks about the very last scene where what's her name? Is it Maeve? What's the name of his mother's name? Where they have the funeral.
Oh yeah.
And all the iron workers get together, and they have this sort of marching band that they put together, but they're iron workers, not musicians. And they haven't practiced and whatever. And the way that it's composed to sound like, this is the first time I've ever seen a show where they intentionally play as if they're amateurs in this, but they play the Andor theme in part of the music mix, right? So it's a really interesting examination of how the music makes the show that much better, and then how the composer actually uses the music as part of the story, right? So yeah, definitely check that out.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a good long, and he examines, he goes through the entire show and sort of shows how, again, this 4-note chord progression. He even plays some of it and plays around with it himself. Like there's one point where in the episode, he overlays a bunch of different versions of it, and it still sounds like amazing. This trailer, I just saw this trailer today. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but Tetris is coming out. It's the story of the making of the game Tetris, the marketing of the game Tetris and the first Game Boy. And Taron Egerton plays this American business person who discovered it and went to Russia and negotiated with the Soviet Union to get the rights and release it. So yeah, they did a great graphic novel on that a number of years back. I wonder if it's an adaptation of that story. Yeah, it's probably based on it. Yeah, I think I've seen that one too. Yeah, I have a copy of it. It's a really interesting story. So yeah, I think that'd be a really good doc or a docu-series or whatever. Well, even the trailer is funny. Like if you watch the trailer, it's got he explains what Tetris means and all that kind of stuff too. Plus the theme song from the game is part of the soundtrack. Yeah. So that's me and then I forgot to mention that Just Watch is now an app for iOS and Android. So if you're curious about where all these shows and movies are appearing, you can download the Just Watch app now. You don't necessarily have to go to the website. Do you also have stock in the Just Watch company? No, I don't. No, Jaime discovered Just Watch. It wasn't me. Oh, was it Jaime? Sorry, I don't mean to take credit away from you, buddy.
I don't think I did. I think it was Tim that brought it into our lives.
Just Watch? No, I didn't. I didn't bring it to the group. I thought you had brought it.
Really?
Yeah, we have to go back and fact check that. I'm pretty sure it was you that brought the service to us to be able to figure out where we can watch things. Yeah. Let's go back and listen to the previous 149 episodes and 400 episodes of More Than Just Code. If you go to the website and you look up the tags, you can search by tag, because I tag all the episodes as well as because I make notes as we go through so people can find stuff. Well, I can find stuff later, to be honest with you. But I'm going to hand over the reins to Jaime to tell us about his pick for the week.
Yeah, so despite Tetris sounding like it was absolutely going to be another video game adaptation, when I saw that in the list, we've got the HBO Mario Kart trailer that was on Saturday Night Live.
That was so funny.
Nice skit using the Mario characters in their sort of gritty reality of the Last of Us style of show, with Pedro Pascal being the guest host on the show. So it's fun. We've got the link on there. It's something that works surprisingly well as an adaptation. So I enjoyed it.
It was,
folks might have seen it, but you can see it again.
Yeah, it was super funny. They did two sort of spoof things in that. Did you see the other one, which was the wing ad that they did in that episode? It was like a Super Bowl wing ad starring Pedro Pascal, and he was like sitting around with their friends. They're like, advertising this wing joint, and it's like, hey, you can get, a tray of, 25 wings for just $12.99. Or if you want to go for the big feast, you can get this. And they just keep going further and further until eventually they're literally like airdropping ranch dressing on your house and stuff. It's so funny. I highly recommend looking that one up too. I find SNL can be a little hit and miss, but both of those were like instant classic, hilarious bits with Pedro.
Cool.
Yeah, I just have one thing to sort of add on. As I say, Extraordinary was definitely my most enjoyed thing over the last month. But the other one that I watched, which was, I like Joey King. I've seen her in a few different things, and I think she's funny. And so I saw that they had this Hulu movie on Disney Plus here in Canada called The Princess. And it's basically, she's sort of the damsel in distress. She's this princess in medieval times. She gets kidnapped, and the evil princess kidnapped her and locked her in the tower and stuff like that. But she's basically like, the not so damsel in distress, where she just starts like beating ass on all the people in the castle, and she's literally like throwing people out the window. And it's almost like Kill Bill meets the fairy tale. It's not super high art, but if you're looking for something that's just like mindless savage beatings, it's very, very satisfying in that way. Like the choreography and the fight stuff is actually really good, and it kind of turns the tropes of the damsel in distress on its ear in a fun way. So if you're looking for something not necessarily high art, and it's certainly not the strongest plot in the whole world, but it definitely it punches and kicks pretty good.
Cool. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, hey, Jonathan, people want to get in touch with you, where do they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as @JPK News, or on YouTube as youtube.com/#JPK, I believe is what it says.
And Jaime, if people want to get in touch with you, where do they find you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithAHair.
All right, my name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA, and that's how you'll find me on the Twitter machine, and on Mastodon, and on YouTube, and all the other places. So, yeah, till next time, we'll see you in the future, or on another timeline. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spockcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spockcast website at spockcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spockcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
How do you say her name?
Oh, did they have her name spoken?
Yeah.
Morning, Moreg. We've been looking up to watch some of this.
Did you hear her say Moreg, or?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I played it. When we started watching it, I was like, I don't know how to say that, and we went to a like a Gallic, pronunciation thing that basically spelled it out, and it still was not clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that she was, fairly new. She was, like a stage performer in Cork. And yeah, this was sort of like her first sort of breakout thing. And
Well, she was in Belfast, right?
yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And Borderland, apparently,
But
too.
she hasn't really had very much sort of mainstream stuff. And then, yeah, she's the lead of the show, and she's hilarious. She's absolutely a riot. All of them are. The whole cast of all four of them are really funny.
Yeah, she's been in 3 things. She's been in Belfast, Tell Me Everything, and Extraordinary. But she also... Wait, why did it say Borderland? Played a character in Borderland. Yeah, she played Carol in Borderland with Felicity Jones. Unless that hasn't come out yet?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, there's no year on it, so maybe it hasn't come out yet. Because Mark Strong's in that one, too. He's pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Mark Strong's a great actor.
Well, since we've had a lot of content, I didn't want to bring this up in the show, but I have been playing Red Dead Redemption 2 practically every day for the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's like I don't do anything else, right? And what's interesting about it is when I started playing the game, like at first, you die constantly.
Oh, I know. I played it for the first 4 or 5 hours.
So anyway, I finally figured it out. So I played it, right? And then I watched a few YouTube videos to figure out how to survive some of the trials and tribulations, right? I've now got to the point where I can actually win a gun battle with a bunch of people, right? I figured out, every time I end up, dispatching somebody and the horse is there, I take over the horse and make it my own, so I run around with 2 horses a lot. You have one saddle where all your stuff lives, and you can move it from one horse to another. But I've discovered, horses have value, and they're like dogs. They just keep following you around, right? So that's cool. And then there's all these little missions. And so at first I just ran around like you do the first chapter, and then that's like a very that's a tutorial chapter, right? And then you have this whole world to sort of explore. And so I was trying to figure this out, and then on some of the YouTube videos, they showed another sort of county that I hadn't been to yet. So about 2 weeks into playing the game, I decided, okay, well, let me go to the edge of the earth and see what happens. And let me, I think there's a sort of cloudy area where it's not focused. I thought, well, what if I go over there and try and get to there? So it turns out there's one borderline that you, in the south, let's call it the southwest corner of the game, that because I haven't done the story yet, right? As soon as I cross that border, these mysterious gunmen start gunning me down, and it just kills me. So there are parts of the game where you can't walk off the edge of the earth because you just die, right? So I tried it a few times. I even took 2 of my horses over there. So one of my horses is stuck over there now, and I have to go back and get him at some point in the future, right? But I'm risking my life to go get him. But now I finally figured out how to play the episodes, like chapters, right? So, because, the characters get highlighted on the map and you kind of go over to them and then they start, there's a cutscene and whatever. So the first while I just kept dying. And the second while I just, ended up with this world that I just kind of ran around and just, wreaked havoc and stole horses and shot chickens and whatever and skinned, deer and things like that. And learned about sort of the resource management thing. And now I'm into now I can't seem to get out of the game part because I know how to go from one chapter to the next and do all these different missions, right? So it's similar to that other game, the Metal Gear, the last one I played, right?
Yeah.
The Ghost one and Ghost Recon or whatever it's called. But it's the way to describe it. It's funny because it is kind of cheesy in terms of like the animation, but it's like playing a character in a movie, right? Is a close and Last of Us was like that too, and so was some of the Uncharted ones, right? And Lara Croft, of course, I've done Tomb Raider and all that kind of stuff. Like once you figure out the method for surviving and getting through these episodes, they get quite deep in terms of story, right? So. Some of the cutscenes I could do without. I've also figured out how to skip through those, right? But
yeah, and
some of the missions are some of the major boss battles are kind of annoying. But yeah, hide behind trees and rocks. That's the secret.
Yeah, I got to see that one firsthand. So when I got the game, I sat down and I played, like 5-6 hours, and made it to a certain point, but just couldn't commit to it, and sort of fell off. But my son had sat down and watched what I was sort of into and was like, oh, this looks cool. and he just got sucked in like a vortex. He must have spent like 200 hours on that game.
Oh yeah,
every single customized every gun.
That's his thing, right? Yeah,
all the horses, like it just went to the nines, and and had a blast. Like he loved it. He was having a great time doing it, and he was just like, "I can't believe you aren't playing this. I can't believe you aren't playing this." I'm like, I don't have 200 hours. Like they don't exist anymore.
Yeah, it is all consuming. I could be working. I have a couple of apps I'm working on right now. I just haven't touched them in like weeks, right? I would say I started playing it like 6 months ago, and it was so much so, and I stopped. Mm-hmm. And then because I binge on my PlayStation, and then I forget about it for a while, right? I'll forget it for like a year and a half. In fact, in order to get this game going, I went and bought another 1 terabyte SSD drive to put in it so I could have the game, download the game, and also have The Last of Us on the game, and right, because I keep like one of the things I've learned about media years and years ago is if you have a hard drive, you will fill it, right? And of course getting an SSD in an old PlayStation 4 is like definitely a must-do upgrade because it makes it so much easier to play the games, right?
For sure.
Yeah, but yeah, so before I could play Last of Us, I had to download this, I think it's like a 300 megabyte game. It's not small, but it takes up space. I had to upgrade my PlayStation before I could download the game and play it. Right. And then, of course, the Red Dead Redemption also had a huge software update as well because I hadn't played it in a while, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's an all-consuming game. Like once you get into it, and I'm sort of going through it to get to the point where I can just run around like you see people on YouTube do, right?
How long did it take you to finish Last of Us 1?
It wasn't that long. It was probably like maybe a week and a half.
So 15, 20 hours?
Yeah, I could probably go back and through it. So because I got the upgraded version, I played the first game, and then I played the little Ellie story as well. The Ellie story kind of goes pretty quick, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And again, that's another one of those things. Once you figure out how to battle the infected, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think that was the part that because they quickly introduce you to it's not like there's one kind of infected, right? Like there's the different kinds as you go. So there's the runners, and then there's the clickers, and then there's the what do they call the bloaters, and yeah. So you kind of have to figure out okay, these ones you have to do this, these ones you have to do this. What do you do if they're both in the room at the same time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That was always the one that vexed me, where I'm like, okay, so if I kill this one, then that one's going to come after me.
Yeah, the Molotov cocktails are pretty effective.
Just the best thing ever in that game. Like, buy me more bottles, please.
The difference is though with The Last of Us, you have to go from A to B. You can't sort of wander around. Whereas in this game,
it's sandbox, a huge sandbox.
Yeah, and so you'll be on a mission, and you'll be with your Dutch is the main character you're following around, right? So he's sort of the mission leader. He'll say, okay, we're going to go over here and do this, and we'll fight these guys off, and then we'll go over to this next station, and we'll break through this door. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, well, I just killed all these guys. They've got cool guns. Some of them have potions in their pocket and coins and whatever. I just go around looting them. Right? and then Dutch is like, come on, Arthur, what are you doing? Come on, Arthur. But I discovered a glitch yesterday too in a couple of the battles on one of the islands that I went to. You get surrounded by these Spanish shooters, and they're shooting at you, and they're in cornfields, and you can't see them, right? And there's a glitch because I killed everybody, and I'm standing there, and they're all going, "What are you doing, Arthur? What are you doing?" There's nobody to shoot.
No, yeah,
nobody's shooting at me. And sort of it must be a glitch in the game because I had to go into the cornfield and find the one guy that was glitching and shoot him, and then the cutscene came in, right? There are parts there was another one where there's a ship coming towards the island and shooting. A big, cannon shooting cannons at you, right? But I couldn't get to the part where we go get the gun to fire against the ship because I had to kill the one guy on B. And so I started running around off track to try and psych the game into releasing this character so I can deal with it, right? Because it's weird, but it's bad programming, Jaime. I don't know how they get away with this. Somebody files a bug report.
These massive AAA games, there's these wild physics simulations and AI simulations and other things that just They can't possibly test it all, so it's always like patch after patch after patch, and you'll see funny stuff out there on the interwebs. You go on YouTube and be like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening, kind of stuff.
Yeah, there has this one fast travel thing where once you figure out the secret to fast travel, because you have to ride your horse from one place to the next, right? But once you figure out how to do fast travel, you can basically, you make a camp and you say where you want to go, and as long as you have visited that village before, you can go there, right? You can either pay a coachman to take you in a stagecoach, or you can just transport yourself. But what happens when you do that? There's a cutscene that comes in. It sort of shows, with the cinematic music and it shows you, riding across the terrain, but like it takes like a minute and a half instead of like 15 minutes of horse riding, right? But occasionally when the new scene renders, it kind of renders in layers, like asynchronously. So you get like people just appear or like textures that like the horse is standing on top of nothing because the texture hasn't been drawn underneath the horse yet, right? It's all those kind of glitchy things. Like yesterday was a boat where somebody was picking me up in a boat in one of the cutscenes, and the bottom of the boat wasn't properly rendered, so like it was like the boat was full of water. I guess they forgot to turn the mask on that layer or whatever, right? So yeah, it's weird.
I find the realism in that game to be kind of eerie at times, though. Like Xavier was showing me, like if you shoot someone and you leave them in the woods and you come back later, they're like they're rotted. They start to rot, and eventually you go back and there's like a skeleton there. I'm like, that's a level of realism I'm not sure I need in games.
Well, I haven't seen that either. I haven't seen that myself, but I've seen that in some of the pictures I've seen online. The other thing too is if you kill a rabbit or whatever and you hang it on your horse, or you kill a deer and you've got it strapped across the back of your horse, and you don't take it to a butcher and have him, prepare it for you, people will start saying that your horse smells, and you'll hear flies buzzing around and as the thing's decomposing, right? Yeah, it's weird. But there's tons of things to collect. It's like you're constant, like every room you go into, you just start. Somebody said after watching the first episode of The Last of Us, one of the people I follow online says Joel didn't check enough drawers in this episode.
Yeah, you're always looking for scissors and tape, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I need me some scissors and some tape. That's what's going to solve this problem.
And to make my baseball bat into a mayhem device. Exactly.
That's right. Or what is it? Shivs, right? Or in the first game, it's shivs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I can't. I'm kind of conflicted. Like the last game I played in January when I had some time, I finished playing Lego Marvel Avengers, which I'd never finished. I was like halfway through, so I went in and played all the little mini missions and unlocked all the characters and had a good time. But yeah, open games now, the games that just sort of have these like, you can play for, hundreds and hundreds of hours. I don't know. Maybe I'll get there again. Maybe when I don't have 3 teenagers rattling around here and stuff and a busy job, it'll be easier. But yeah, just finding the time for that kind of thing is challenging. I kind of like a game like Last of Us, where it's like, there's a beginning and a middle and an end. You can like stop at logical spots and like you drop it for a week and then pick it up again. Like that to me is it's just more accessible at this point in my life.
Yeah, I mean, like in as much as I'm playing a lot of these things, I can go through a chapter battle sort of thing in like 20 minutes now, right? So
yeah, that helps.
I mean, yeah, the fact that like it was super frustrating at first. I'm like first week or first couple of days of playing the game, I'm like, what, do you just die constantly in this game? Is that the idea? Like how do you possibly live from one moment to the next? I learned early. One of the mistakes I was making early was when you get into a conflict, run away.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you kill somebody and somebody witnesses it, like there's ways to scare the witnesses or chase the witnesses. You know what? Just leave the area.
I made that same mistake when I did my first playthrough. I went into town and I meant to I meant to do one thing and I accidentally shot somebody in the face.
Yeah, or run them over. Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, oh, this is not going to go on. The whole town was after me. I was like, uh-oh, that's not right.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Oops. And it was literally like an old lady or something. I was just like, I meant to like say something to her and accidentally pulled out my pistol and shot her in the face. I'm like, oh God.
Well, if you the R2 is just shoot, right?
Oh,
so yeah,
God. It's just.
But I've run people over. I've knocked people over. Like sometimes I forget to take the bandana wherever your mask when you don't want to be identified. If you ride into a town with the bandana on, they will start attacking you.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you're already a bandit. Yeah.
Or you have your gun out, and sometimes you like a lot of times you just want to walk up to somebody and talk to them for a minute, right? And they pull out a gun and start shooting at you.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they're the jerk, right? So
the funniest part I found watching my son play through was the poker. He sat there for hours playing Texas Hold'em, and he would I would see him like having breakfast, and he'd be like, "So in a game of Texas Hold'em, I'm like, what are you doing at night?" And he's like, I started playing it in this game. It's really interesting. And he's spent hours just sitting there at these little crappy card tables playing Texas Hold'em poker until he got good at it. I was like, oh, okay, please don't gamble. Like, it's just, like, lots of good vices.
I can play. I'm pretty good at the Texas poker. I can get through those challenges pretty quickly because I just play fast enough to win and get out of there, right? So there's one poker game where there's a guy sitting behind the person you're playing against, and you look at him and he'll nod or he'll shake his head.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, that works.
And robbing banks is probably the most profitable, and apparently there are safes on the trains. But actually, one time I was playing, and there's these beasts that you can go, like there's a legendary wolf and a legendary bison or whatever, and they're pretty mean, and they're hard to get. But I wanted to go. I found out where the legendary wolf was early in the game, and then one day I was just sort of riding around, and there was just like a train that had been robbed, right? Not by me, but there was a train just sitting there with no passengers, no money on it. And I thought, cool, I have a train. So I drove the train around for a couple of hours. And I went up and, battled the legendary wolf. And and the thing about it is that, if you do something like that, if you find like a train or something like that and you take it to one place, if you die, the train's gone.
No, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, and yesterday I ended up you end up getting shipwrecked at one point, and then you end up coming back to the world, and your horse is gone when you first come back, because I got this really cool horse and I took him with me, and then it did a cutscene instead of me doing it, and then I went back and then my horse was gone. I'm like, what happened to my second horse? And I went back to get him, and it wasn't even a pile of bones. He was just gone, right? And when you whistle for your horse, it just said your horse is lost. I'm like, what do you mean my horse is lost? I guess they didn't write the logic in that for the edge case where somebody like me would want to have a second horse, right?
I laughed hysterically at the anatomically correct horses too. That was the other one that Xavier's like,
oh, really?
Check out my horse.
They poop a lot.
They do poop a lot, but apparently I didn't realize it when I first started playing. I must have had a female horse. At one point, my son got a...
Yeah, he dresses him as girl and boy when the horse,
At one point, he had a male horse and like... swinging back and forth between his legs. I was like, really? Like, is that necessary? Yeah. But they were going for authenticity. They got it.
Yeah, well, I didn't check my horse out, but at one point I had a thoroughbred. I just stumbled across a thoroughbred and kept it, right? And it was huge compared to the other horses, right?
That's funny.
And fast.
Yeah.
But then I died and lost it.
Because that's how that goes.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I guess we better call it.
Yeah. I
have to go. Maybe I'll go play like 20 minutes of Red Dead before I go to bed.
I have been up since 5:45, so I should probably get some sleep at some point. My dogs decided they decided that they wanted to be fed at 5:45, so they decided on a tandem attack. One of them,
the animals?
One of them stood over menacingly. The little one, thankfully, stood over my face menacingly, staring at me, while the other one licked my hands and feet until I woke up. So, it was not quite the wake up I was looking for this morning, but I had to go to the office.
Yeah,
so
baby gates. You need baby gates.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the little one is as you've no doubt experienced here, quite adept at hopping. So I don't think that would stop her.
True,
so.
Yeah. So my dog, like my dog, for example, Jaime, he's 100 pounds, but if you put up like a baby gate, he can't figure it out. right? So like right now there's a baby gate upstairs to keep him from going all the way up to the 3rd floor, because trying to get him to come back down when I go to bed is like a pain in the butt. So for like half a week there, I couldn't get him out of the bed, and so the 3 of us had to share the bed, and he's like, he's not the most democratic sleeper, right? So yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, it was fun getting back together, guys. It was nice to nice to get back in action. Congratulations on 150 episodes.
Yep. I only have 3-hour episode to cut down to 2 hours.
Well,
now.
you could not only can you pull the stuff off of for the Spockie's episode, but you can put in a little bonus after show to that one too. So
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
We'll see.
Talk to you next week.
Ciao.
All right.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.